Hello everyone, this is your friend from Naruto Audio Fanfics, and we are back once again with a brand new fanfic. Which is what if Naruto had Uzumaki, Senju, and Uchiha blood and became the ultimate shinobi prodigy, Naruto times Yugao Azuki times Hinata Hyuga times Ino Yamanaka times Tamari times Anko Midarashi times Kurenai Yuhi, Part 3. If you enjoy this story, don't forget to hit the like button, thumbs up, and subscribe to the channel for more amazing Naruto fanfics like this. So without wasting any more time, let's start today's fanfic. All the Genin teams arrived at Training Ground 44 where the second part of the Chunin exams were going to be held. Naruto was standing with his teammates observing everything around him. There were a total of around 25 to 30 teams that were going to be taking part in this round. He was also waiting for further information on what they were going to do in this round. He could see some Chunin and Junin level shinobi standing there. But what got his attention were the Anbu officers that were present. One thing he realized was that this round was not going to be easy like the last one. He had heard quite a lot about this particular training ground. It was very dangerous and only Chunin and above level shinobi had the permission to enter the field. But he didn't know what made this training ground so dangerous. A red-framed sunglasses wearing Junin called out, gathering everybody's attention. When everyone had given him their full attention, he started. Welcome to Training Ground 44, also known as the Forest of Death. My name is Aoba Yamashiro and I will be your proctor for the second round. Before we begin this test, I have something to hand out to you all. He took out forms from his jacket and continued, these are just standard consent forms. Before the test, you all have to read over this form and sign it. One random genin asked in confusion, but, why do we have to sign it? The proctor adjusted his sunglasses before speaking. There's a very high chance of death involved in this. Some of you may not come back, and by signing it you agree that you will be taking part in this round at your own risk. Neither me nor the Leaf Village will take responsibility if anything happens to any of you in the forest. All the genins gulped after hearing him say that, and some of them were hesitating to continue the exams. Well, if you please hurry so that I can explain what you're going to do in the forest, the proctor spoke once again. Naruto had no hesitation on his face. He was not going to back down from it. He was fully confident in himself. He also had full confidence in both his teammates that they were capable of handling anything. He looked at them and asked, "Are you guys ready?" "Yeah," they both said to him with grins. They took their forms and signed them without reading them. After all the genins had signed their forms, the proctor started again. Alright, listen carefully everyone. I'll explain what you'll be doing in this test. This will test everyone's survival skills. Each team will be assigned a different entrance gate to enter the forest. In the center of the forest there's a locked tower located 10 kilometers from each gate. It will be a race to reach the tower. But to enter the tower your team needs to have both these heaven and earth scrolls. He showed them the scrolls in his hand. Half of you will receive the heaven scrolls and the rest will receive the earth scrolls. So you have to fight to get both the scrolls. That means half of us will fail this test, a genin mentioned. I said it will be a race. We can't allow a large number of squads to pass this test for the next round. So only a number of teams will be allowed to qualify for the next round. Also the team has to pass the first round. If not, they will be disqualified and the team behind them will take their place for the next round, the Junin mentioned, shocking the genins. What? Were the cries of many genins present there. You can't do that. That's totally unfair. Rules are rules. One more thing, the test has a time limit. You will get 5 days to finish this test and if a team loses a member or is injured heavily, then you cannot continue the test. And the most important thing you should know is that you must not open the scroll before reaching the tower. If you open it, then your team will be disqualified immediately from the exams, the Junin proctor informed the genins. Alright, please take your form over there. He pointed behind him. And exchange it for the scroll, and after that each team will be assigned a gate to be let inside. After finishing the whole process and getting a debrief, all the genin teams were standing at their assigned gates and waiting for the signal to enter the forest. Naruto was also behind the gates with his teammates. He was deep in his thoughts. This test was very tricky and had a very high chance of failure. Only a number of teams would be allowed to move to the next round. This exam was very important for him, not only because it was the Chunin selection exams. It was important for him because he wanted to test out his limits and there was no other platform better than this. He wanted to dominate these exams. So how are we going to do this? Yugao spoke, clearly seeing what Naruto was thinking. A moment later, all the gates opened and they got a green signal to enter the forest. Wasting no time, Naruto and his teammates flew into the forest at high speed. They were jumping through the trees when Naruto spoke. We're not going to waste our time in searching for the teams to fight. We are going straight to the tower. But Naruto-kun, we need the Earth Scroll. Without that we can't enter in the tower, Hana pointed out, not understanding what Naruto was trying to do with that. Naruto stopped and Hana and Yugao both came to stop beside him. Naruto took out the scroll from his pouch and dropped his eyes to it. Those who would become Chunin were all scattered around in this forest known as the Forest of Death. The scroll in his hand had the character for heaven written on it in bold black calligraphy. They had to take the Earth Scroll from another team. But the big problem was how they should know which team had what scroll. And what if they attacked a team and still couldn't get a scroll they wanted? Then it would be a complete waste of time, which they couldn't afford. We can't afford to spend too much time in this forest. So we'll move directly towards the tower and I will hold the scroll in my hand for others to see which scroll our team has. If the other team is carrying the same scroll as us, they will likely avoid fighting us to save their time. By this we can attract the team holding the scroll opposite of ours. Naruto said. It's a good plan. But it's very risky at the same time. Yugao said. This is the only option we have, if we want to finish in the top 4. Naruto stated and looked at Yugao. Also you're a very good sensor, so you can sense any approaching team. Hana and Yugao both agreed with his plan, after realizing it was the best option they had. They started moving towards the tower at normal speed, while Naruto was holding the scroll, clearly showing which type of scroll it was. After running for hours, Team 12 still hadn't encountered any other team yet. But they knew that it was just a matter of time before another team came towards them. Just like their team was in search for the Earth Scroll, there were other teams that required the Heaven Scroll as well, which Naruto was holding openly. While in the forest, they learned why this training field was forbidden and known as the Forest of Death. They not only had to look out for the other teams, but they also had to keep their eyes open around their surroundings. The whole forest was filled with giant man-eating beasts, poisonous plants and insects, and all kinds of dangerous creatures. And if that wasn't enough, there were numerous traps set up throughout the forest. One thing clear to Naruto was that they couldn't afford to spend too much time in this forest. Even if the time limit was 5 days, if they spent that much time in here, they were not going to pass. So they had to complete this task as soon as possible. He was aiming to pass this test in a single day. As they were walking towards the tower, Yugao spoke, getting their attention. I sense there's a team approaching us. How far? Hana asked, wondering why she hasn't smelled them yet. Not too far. They will catch on to us in 4 or 5 minutes, judging by their pace, Yugao stated. Naruto spoke after thinking for a moment. I have a plan. I will be bait to lure them. You two hide your presence and wait for my signal. What's the plan? Yugao asked, looking at him carefully. I already told you go hide and wait for my signal, you will know when the time comes. Naruto responded. Come on Yugao, we don't have time to argue. Let's go with whatever his plan is. Hana spoke in between them and got a nod from Yugao a moment later. They both quickly separated from Naruto, hiding themselves by masking their presence with a genjutsu, as Naruto started to jump through the trees at a slow pace, waiting for the approaching team catch up to him. He was jumping through the trees, when he quickly had to dodge a kunai which was thrown at him from behind. He jumped and landed on the ground. Just as he landed, 3 genin surrounded him in a triangle formation. Running alone in a forest like this is Suicide Kid, a boy said with a grin from behind him. As the 3 ninja were spread out in a triangle formation around Naruto, he looked at each one of them and noticed that they wore the protectors of village Takigakure on their foreheads. How can they even allow a kid like you to enter the exams? This time a girl spoke in a mocking way. Naruto looked at the boy standing in front of him, the most assertive of the group, maybe 15 or 16. He seemed to be the leader. If you hand over the scroll like a good boy, we won't kill you. But if you're gonna fight back, then I can't promise anything, the boy in front said, as he was holding the scroll that clearly paired with the one in Naruto's hand, showing Earth written on it. It just as he had planned. Just as Naruto wanted the Earth scroll, his opponent wanted the Heaven scroll from him. They had fallen right into Naruto's trap. So, 3 against 1. Be good and. There's a requirement in the examinee qualification for this test. Naruto cut off the boy in front of him, that you have to participate in a 3-person cell. So why am I here alone like this? Poor kid, your teammates ditched you, the girl said from his left, like she was making fun of him. Turning his head a bit towards the girl, Naruto noted, the other 2 were waiting in the ambush. Can't you anticipate that much, at least? The careless smile slipped from her lips and the girl's face grew pale. What's the point forcing us to hide, if that idiot was just going tell them? Yugao muttered to Hana, as they were hiding in the trees waiting for his signal. Calm down. Well, yaa. Hana responded. Relax. I'm alone here, my teammates went in search for a team with a scroll. Naruto said, and turned his eyes back to the leader. The only conclusion you can come to from this 3 against 1 situation is that it's to your advantage. As a leader and as a chunin, you're a failure. Why you watch your mo? You're even using my childish appearance as fuel for your carelessness, Naruto spoke, interrupting him. Naruto liked to play with his opponent's minds, to make them lose their confidence even before the fight could start. See, come on. Let's just finish him already, the boy in the rear called out, sounding uneasy by how calm Naruto looked facing them. The leader swallowed with a gulp, the saliva building up in his mouth, sweat running down his forehead. Naruto could clearly see how uneasy he was making them feel. This had always been his game plan. When a person stops believing in himself, that's the moment they lose their fight. Why doesn't it make you uncomfortable that I'm here alone? Don't you think there's some meaning behind that fact that my team is doing this exam separately? Do you want to know the difference between my team and the rest? The difference is that my team is far superior to the other teams. Naruto spoke without showing any doubt on his face. He knew that he was sounding a bit arrogant. But it was necessary to put a doubt in his opponent's mind. The opposing team was starting to lose themselves in an unfavorable fear. Gee, get him. The leader half shrieked, half shouted, and shuriken were launched at Naruto from 3 different directions. In the next instant, the leader before Naruto and the boy at his rear both started running. The girl leapt up, aiming at him from the top. He was caught in an attack from both sides, and if he fled upwards, the girl would catch him. At the last moment, before shuriken could dig into him, he jumped in the air avoiding the shuriken. The Taki genin seeing him jump in the air thought that Naruto had fallen into their trap. The female member of the team grinned, seeing she got a chance to finish him off. She brought her sword down, arg, and sliced at Naruto. Naruto wasn't able to block the sword as the blade went right through him. But in an instant, he completely dissolved in a murder of crows, shocking the 3 genin. He appeared again at a different side and a little away from them. Not understanding what had happened, the 3 ninjas stood dumbfounded, looking at Naruto. I will say it again. Naruto spoke calmly, not showing any kind of worry as he held out his hand towards the leader. Be good and hand over the scroll. If you do, I'll let you go. Don't underestimate us, the leader stated, coming out of his shock. Then he started going through the hand signs. The boy and girl to his left and right also wove the same signs. Got it. Right. His teammates responded. Water style. The leader shouted, and that's as far as they got. Naruto signaled his hidden teammates, as he got his opponents where he wanted them to be. Before they could even finish their jutsu, they heard fang over fang. Then Hana came to them spinning with her ninja dog, knocking them off the ground before the 3 genin could recover from the sudden surprise attack. Yugao landed beside Naruto and started waving quick hand signs, and coming to a stop she looked at Naruto from the corner of her eyes. Naruto nodded at her. He knew what he had to do. With that, Yugao called out water style, water missile jutsu, and shot out a large missile made of water from her mouth, towards the target. While she launched her jutsu, Naruto himself wove through the fast hand signs and called out his jutsu. Lightning release. Lighting bolt. He thrust his palm forward, as a bolt of lightning current flew from his palm into the water missile. It was a combination of lighting and water that he and Yugao had come up with during their training sessions. As both nature elements complemented each other very well, it made their jutsu more powerful. As the electricity flowed through the water missile, it sped towards the fallen genins, who could do nothing other than watch in horror. The jutsu hit them, forcing them to cry out in pain because of the lighting current that went through their bodies. The jutsu died down and the three genin were left heavily breathing on the ground. The jutsu was not dangerous or life-threatening. They hadn't put too much chakra into it because their goal was to just injure their opponents, not to kill them. This was a test. There was no need to kill or injure anyone. All they needed was to show their opponents their difference in power and make them lose heart. There were numerous cuts and bruises on the three tacky genins. But as they were still breathing heavier than normal, they slowly got to their feet. Fear could easily be seen on their faces. Their legs were trembling, almost giving out from under them from fear, but the three still managed to stay on their feet somehow. You're outclassed from the start, you cannot continue to fight us in your state. But if you still want to go, I don't mind. Naruto closed the distance between them. But if you do, then this time, me and my teammates will not go easy on you. Bastard, you had us cornered from the start. Your two teammates were waiting for your signal to attack. The leader spoke, gritting his teeth. You made a mistake, jumping right into battle without thinking that it might be a trap and you paid for it, Naruto stated, looking at them with his cold blue eyes. So what will you choose now? Will you hand over the scroll or do you want to continue fighting? The female member of the group moved her pointed jaw up and down several times wanting to say something, but couldn't speak because of the fear. The three of them were completely ruled by fear of death. Please let us go. The leader dropped to his knees and then reached a trembling hand into his bag, and dug around for something. Naruto and his teammates stared at him for a moment, until the boy thrust the earth scroll at them. Naruto took the scroll. As long as you all understand. He sent a little chakra down his legs. Then he quickly went around behind their leader and brought the edge of his flat hand down on his neck. I can't have you attacking my team from behind. Take a little nap here. The genin collapsed on the ground as if prostrating himself, while Hana and Yugao both moved swiftly around behind their respected targets to deliver similar blows to each of them and knocking them out as well. Yay! We finally got the scroll. Yugao cheered happily and high-fived with Hana. We still got to reach the tower and hope we don't encounter another team on our way, Naruto called out. They both nodded at him in agreement and Yugao spoke. Your mind games can really be scary sometimes. She and Hana were both aware of his habit of playing with opponents' minds, as this was not first time he had done something like this. During those times, he had a habit of saying something that he shouldn't say and could also sound arrogant, saying how superior he is from them and things like that. But they understood that he was not arrogant, he only acted like that to demoralize the opponent as part of his strategy. It was necessary to get them off guard. Naruto responded calmly. Come on. We got the scroll and I don't want to spend any more time in this forest, Hana called out to get their attention. They nodded, now that they didn't have any reason to stick around there any longer. The two heaven and earth scrolls were together. Now they just had to head for the tower in the center of the training ground. With that, they started their journey towards the tower. They had no plans of stopping until they reached it so they could get there as fast as possible. Following day, after running non-stop for hours, Team 12 arrived at the tower located in the center of the forest. After taking the scroll from the opposition team, their journey to the tower was quite easy. They hadn't encountered any other teams. Once they arrived at the tower, they noticed it was empty and that no other teams could be seen. They looked around to find someone to guide them from there, not knowing what they had to do. They finally just stood in the entrance room looking around. What else do we have to do now? Hana asked in confusion. What does this mean? Yugao spoke when she noticed writing on the wall. She walked forward and read out loud for the other two. If you do not possess heaven, gain knowledge and be prepared. If you do not possess earth, run through the fields and seek strength. If you open both, heaven and earth, scrolls, dangerous paths turn into safe ones. This is the secret. It shall lead you on your way. It's clearly referring to the scroll, Naruto mentioned, looking at the scrolls in his hand. It's telling us to open both the heaven and earth scroll. Hana and Yugao looked at him. You sure about it? We just have to find out by opening the scrolls, Naruto stated, and Hana took one scroll from his hand. As they both opened the scrolls at the same time, they looked in confusion at the weird pattern drawn in each scroll. Suddenly Naruto's eyes widened and he spoke. This is a summoning seal. He threw the scroll forward from his hand and Hana followed him doing the same. And suddenly a puff smoke appeared in front of them. When it disappeared, a tiger-masked Anbu appeared from it. Members of Team 12 looked at him in confusion and asked, "Who are you?" The person in the mask responded, "I am here to welcome you on completing the second round of the Chunin exam. Also, I was given the duty to pass the three of you a message." The masked Anbu then took out a watch from his pocket and looked at, and his eyes widened and a shocked look appeared on his face, but luckily his face was hidden by the mask, so the Genin team in front of him could not see his reaction. Time elapsed in the second round. 5 hours, 25 minutes. This is the new record for the exam held in the 44 training ground. This is most impressive, taking into consideration the fact that your team is one of the youngest in this exam. So congratulations on your achievement, the Anbu said. A little smirk appeared on Naruto's face and Hana and Yugao both grinned happily and gave high fives to each other while shouting, "We did it. We're the best." Naruto then looked at the Anbu in front of him and asked, "What are we doing from here?" "Since we passed this exam." The Anbu nodded. "Yes, your team completed both the first and second exam. So your team is allowed to enter the third round, which you will be notified about later when this round ends. Since your team completed this round in a single day, you will have to wait for the next 5 days, here in this tower. Also, your Junin sensei will be notified about you, so he will be here soon. You can go and rest now. And you aren't allowed to leave this tower. I will take my leave now." Then the Anbu vanished from his spot. Next morning, Hokage office. It was late in the morning and the second round of the Chunin exam was still in progress. A lot of foreign shinobi and people could be seen in the village. The village's Hokage, Hiruzen Sarutobi, stood near the window in his office. He was alone in the office at the moment, because of the ongoing Chunin exam. He had a lot of work in his hand but was quite concerned about Naruto, the youngest contestant in the exam. His team was not very experienced and Hiruzen was wondering if it was right to allow him to participate in the exam. He got out of his thoughts when he heard the door opening, and wondered who would come at this time of the day. Then he saw Danzo coming in the office with his usual emotionless face. "Hiruzen," Danzo addressed him, coming to stop at the front of the desk. "Danzo, what can I do for you?" Hiruzen asked him and sat on his chair. Danzo looked at him and spoke. "I got news that Naruto Uzumaki has successfully completed the second exam and had already reached the tower yesterday." Hiruzen's eyes looked at him straight. "Where did you get that news about Naruto?" "I got that information from the exam proctor. I'm keeping a close look on Uzumaki's progress in these exams," Danzo stated. "I would have never thought that you would waste your time on the exam," Hiruzen said, but was relieved to know that Naruto had successfully completed the second stage. Apparently this year's exam got quite interesting because of Naruto Uzumaki. He has broken all the previous records this year. He completed the second exam in 5 hours, 25 minutes, breaking the last record of Minato Namikaze. Also, he scored the second highest score in the written exam of all time, only behind Minato, who holds the highest score of all time, Danzo informed him, sounding more excited than the number of years he had. But he soon composed himself. "I know he is very strong and talented. But to achieve this feat is quite impressive." Hiruzen spoke with pride in his voice and a little smile on his face hearing about Naruto. His worry washed up after learning this. Naruto is a shinobi of this village and he can take care of himself, Hiruzen thought. He had proved this time and time again. It's also very good for the village's reputation, that he is competing in this exam. Danzo spoke as a matter of fact. Hiruzen looked at him in confusion. "You know that the Chunin exam is a place where the officials from all the countries come together in the same room," Danzo spoke and continued. "Which is to say, it's an opportunity to display the future fighting potential of each land. When Naruto fights in the third round and demonstrates his abilities there, it will enhance the threat our village poses to other countries. Naruto is indeed a gifted ninja, but he is still inexperienced. There are a lot of other older and more experienced participants in these exams. Hiruzen knew all about the true motives of the Chunin exams. Also, you know, Danzo, that there is still stress between the nations. It's not that long that the Third Shinobi War ended. So this year, there will be no other Kage attending the exam other than some of their officials and maybe daimyos. Danzo nodded. Indeed, that's true, and that's more reason to show that Konohagakure is still producing prodigies like Naruto Uzumaki. His performance will be really good for the village reputation. There's a lot of talk about him already among the villages, seeing as he is the youngest contestant in this exam. Hiruzen nodded and was wondering if it was good for Naruto to get too much attention on him. If he continued to gain attention, there would be a possibility that the secret about his heritage would come out and he would have forces after his life because of it. He got interrupted in his thoughts by Danzo, who asked, "So when is the third round taking place? I am looking forward to seeing Naruto Uzumaki in action this time." Hiruzen looked at him and said, "You are showing quite an interest in Naruto." This was also a matter of concern for him that Danzo was showing so much interest in Naruto. He had no idea of Danzo's true intentions. But he was aware that Danzo had ulterior motives. On the other hand, even the astute Hiruzen would not realize just what those motives were. But he would not let Danzo use Naruto as he wanted, that was for certain. Well, as I told you before, we're not having any Kage of other villages, only officials, and the daimyos will arrive in a couple of days. So we will start the third round in 3 days' time, after the end of the second exam. Hiruzen informed him and got a nod from him in return. Time skip. After 5 days, when the second round of the Chunin exams had ended, the teams that had passed both first and second rounds were standing in a huge arena with a platform on either side, and in front of the platform, the Hokage was standing with Junin at his sides. Not many teams were able to pass the exams. Only 12 teams had reached the tower successfully with both scrolls in their possession. But unfortunately, only 4 teams were given the permission to continue the exams, and the rest were sent back because they had not been able to pass the first round. Naruto was standing in front of the line with his teammates beside him. The arena in which they were standing was filled with a lot of Junin and Anbu. The Junin senseis of all the participating teams were standing in front of them with the Hokage in the middle. There were only 2 teams from Konoha. One of them was Team 12 and the other one was Hayate, Izumo and Katetsu. Of the other 2 teams, one was from Kumo and last was from Taki. While standing there, the one thing Naruto noticed was that he and his teammates were getting a lot of attention from other teams, and not only from them, but also from the present Junin and Chunin, who were all paying close attention to his team and especially him. The news that Minato Namikaze's old record of being the fastest to complete this round in the Forest of Death had been broken by Team 12 had been spread around very quickly among the others after they had reached the tower. That Naruto was the youngest of the contestants was not helping them, though they could clearly see pride in their sensei's eyes when they looked at him standing there on the Hokage's right. The proctor from earlier stepped forward and spoke. "Congratulations on passing the second round, everyone. But before we can move on to the third round of the Chunin exams, Hokage-sama would like say something to you all. Listen well." After speaking, he stepped back to his place. Hiruzen stepped forward and cleared his throat before addressing the genin teams present there. "You all have my congratulations on passing the Forest of Death. But before the explanation of the third round, there's one thing I want to make clear to all of you. It's about the true purpose of this exam," he continued. "We do joint exams with other shinobi nations to maintain good relations with the other nations and heighten the level of ninja. Do not let those reasons deceive you. This exam, so to speak, is the epitome of a war between the shinobi nations." The genin looked a little uncomfortably at him. If what he was saying was true, then what did it mean for them? "What do you mean, Hokage-sama?" Katetsu asked, looking at him nervously. "If we go back through history, all the neighboring countries have fought each other over and over again. To avoid wasting military power, all the nations decided to choose a place to fight. That is the beginning of the Chunin selection exam. This exam does examine those who are worthy of Chunin rank. But, on the other hand, it's also a place where ninja fight and carry their country's dignity. In this third exam, feudal lords and famous people from various countries who may be potential clients are involved here as guests. And feudal lords from countries with hidden villages and village high officials will see your battles. If there's a significant difference in power, the strong country will be flooded with jobs and weak countries' jobs will decrease. Why do we have to fight with the risk of losing our lives? Akumo Genin spoke. Naruto spoke suddenly before the Hokage could speak. A country's power is the village's power. A village's power is the ninja's power, and ninja's true power is only born in life or death battle. This platform is a place to show off the ninja's power of one's country. Right, Hokage-sama? Hiruzen closed his eyes and nodded in agreement. Yes, this is a life or death battle for your dreams and village's dignity, Hiruzen stated. I wish you all the very best and hope you all will perform with best of your abilities. Hiruzen then signaled to the proctor to inform them about the third round. The Junin stepped forward and spoke. The third round will take place in 2 days from now in the main arena of the village. You all will proceed as individuals from here. The third round will be one-on-one fights. So if any one of you want to forfeit from the exam, it will not affect your team. 2 hands raised from the same team from Taki. We got injured in the forest and will not be able to fight. So we both would like to step down from this exam. The proctor nodded at them and looked around the genin for anyone else, then spoke. All right, the remaining 10 of you will proceed and the third round will be in 2 days from now. Get as much rest you want in these 2 days. We will see each other in the stadium. The lineup for your fights will be decided there, that's all. The village hidden in the leaves buzzed with activity. Even though it was early in the morning, a lot of people could be seen walking the streets and chatting with each other. And they weren't only locals. Quite a few from other villages could be seen among them. Today was the day for the finals of the Chunin exam, where young genins would showcase their talent and skills in hopes for getting promoted to the Chunin rank. Because of that, a lot of people, such as clients, daimyos of the various nations, and village officials were in the village to see the performances, either for their future business or, in some cases, future threats. A single figure looked over the buzzing activities from the top of the Hokage monument. Naruto stood there, fully geared up in a high-collar black long-sleeved t-shirt with the Uzumaki symbol on his back, gray pants, and his black shinobi sandals. It was a very important day, one he knew he'd remember all his life. It was the opportunity for him to rise in the ranks and finally face more challenging situations. He was really starting to get impatient doing all those chores that they called missions. He knew that for him to get promoted, he would need to show the higher-ups that he had the abilities and mindset to reach Chunin rank. But he wasn't worried. He had full confidence in himself that he would be promoted. But that was not the only goal he had in mind. He wanted to dominate this tournament and win it. He wanted people to remember his name. He wanted to leave a mark at the end of this exam. But he knew it wouldn't be easy. Because of his age, a lot of people didn't think he should be allowed to continue in the exam. But he knew it wasn't the first time a genin around his age was participating in the Chunin exam. He didn't pay much attention to those kind of matters, though. He knew his Jii-chan would handle those things. The only thing that mattered to him was his village, and he wanted to see his village on top of these exams. That's one of the reasons he wanted himself to be the one dominating. He had been training alone with his sensei and had done everything he could to be 100% ready for the finals. He hadn't even seen his other 2 teammates who were busy in their own training with their families. Though he wondered if he should call them his teammates, since they were both going to be his opponents in the finals. He turned his head to look back and saw his sensei walking towards him. A small smile came to Naruto's face as he turned fully to face him. Sensei, what are you doing here? I thought you'd be busy with the other clan heads. Shikaku smiled a little but still maintained the lazy look on his face and shrugged. There's still some time left for the finals to start. So I decided to check on my students. So you already met Hana and Yugao? Naruto asked. I haven't made any contact with any of them in the last 3 days. Both troublesome women looked quite eager to fight in the finals. Shikaku added, and Naruto chuckled at his sensei at the mention of the word troublesome. So are you ready for the finals? Naruto nodded. Hi, I am ready. I have full confidence in myself. Though the only opponents I'm worried about are Hana and Yugao. Shikaku nodded in understanding. That's understandable. They're the only ones who know about you using your Sharingan and fooling your opponent with Genjutsu. But Naruto, don't get too overconfident and underestimate other genins. Also, I advise you not to rely on your Sharingan too much. You have to show off your other skills for the judges to promote you. I know that, sensei, and I am not overestimating anyone. I've worked on my other skills beside the Sharingan, Naruto insisted with a smile. I'm only using it as a last resort. So don't worry about me getting overconfident. Good to hear that, Shikaku muttered, and patted Naruto on the head, which resulted in an annoyed look from him. Naruto hated when people treated him like a kid, and he knew Shikaku knew that. Shikaku only laughed at the look on Naruto's face. Well, good luck for the finals, brat. I should get going now. I have to be with the other clan heads. Naruto nodded. Thank you for training me, sensei. I will make you proud of me. Ah, troublesome, Shikaku muttered in response. Don't mention it, brat, it's my job. Well, anyway, I'll be taking my leave. See you at the stadium. Shikaku walked off, waving goodbye, and left Naruto alone. Naruto turned around and looked over the village once again. He had first thought of going to meet up with Hana and Yugao but decided against it in the end in favor of being alone. Stadium. Some time later, all the genin contestants had gathered in the middle of the stadium and were talking among themselves and waiting for the finals to start. Naruto knew each one of them had trained hard for this moment, and they were all here to represent their respective villages and wanted to make their village stand out from the others. Naruto stood with his arms folded and an impassive look on his face. Hana and Yugao stood at his side. As he looked around the stadium, he was impressed with the amount of people who were present in the stadium. A curving wall swept in and around the circular grounds, while the ceiling was rounded and open. The grounds were covered in dirt, and trees grew here and there. Scaffolding stretched out horizontally, protruding from the top of the walls where a large number of spectators were waiting for the matches to start. There were daimyos and people from the ruling classes in all lands, officials from the villages in the ninja world, Chunin, Junin. There were no empty seats. Some were making bets on participating genins, and a buzz of excitement hung in the air. Which village would stand with the responsibility for the future of the ninja world on its shoulders? This place, where capable genin from every village risked their lives in battle, was a microcosm of the battlefield. Not infrequently, the fights here were directly connected with the power structures among the villages. Which was exactly why Naruto had to show off his true power. Naruto wanted to demonstrate such overwhelming strength that the adults gathered there wouldn't so much as think of laying a hand on Konoha. He had absolutely no intention of going easy on anyone, even if he had to fight against his own teammates. He was going to give this everything he had. You better be ready, Naruto-kun, Yugao said, getting his attention. Naruto looked at her and raised a single eyebrow in confusion. What do you mean? Yugao faced him with a serious look. I have trained hard for this and I don't plan on losing to anyone, especially not you. Your cheap dirty tricks will not work on me. So you better be ready for me. Naruto smiled at her. He was not surprised by her attitude. He knew how serious and determined she was with her training, and that was the thing he liked about her. She wasn't like the other girls he had seen in the academy. Naruto had always secretly admired her, and he was kind of jealous of her. Her sword abilities were far better than his, and he knew he couldn't match her in that department. Also, battling against Hana and Yugao would not be easy because they knew his secrets and how to counter them. I'm not here just to fight, I'm here to win. Naruto responded with a smirk. So don't expect me to go easy on anyone. I don't expect you to go easy on me. Yugao replied with her own smirk. TCHH. Hope you two idiots didn't forget about me. I'm also waiting to fight both of you. As Hana spoke, her companion barked in agreement. I'll kick your anytime, Hana, Yugao responded smugly. And who knows? Maybe I'll end up winning this whole tournament. Naruto yawned as he listened to Yugao. This got an annoyed expression from her and a tick mark appeared on her forehead. Keep dreaming, you idiot, he said. What's taking them so long? Why haven't the matches started yet? Hana wondered, confusedly looking around. The Hokage has yet to arrive. Everyone's waiting for him, I guess. Naruto pointed out with a shrug as he looked at the balcony where the Hokage were going to be sitting. He saw some of the clan heads were already sitting there, and among them he could see Shikaku, who nodded at him upon noticing his gaze. Wow, your observation skills always amaze me, Naruto-kun, Yugao stated with a hint of sarcasm in her tone. Naruto sighed a little. He had gotten used to her by now and he knew she would never miss an opportunity to pull his leg. So he just responded with his own sarcasm. Why thank you Yugao-san, I didn't know you thought so highly of me. Hana chuckled at his answer, while Yugao looked annoyed and glared at Naruto while muttering curses under her breath. Stupid Naru. Stupid blonde. Before they could continue their talk, they were interrupted by the arriving Junin. It was Aoba, the same Junin who had been the proctor in the second round. He came to a stop before the group of genin. Welcome to the finals of the Chunin exam. I think you already know me from before so there is no need for introduction. I'll be the proctor for the finals. Hokage-sama is going to start the proceedings, so please be quiet. Just as he finished, all the spectators started cheering and Naruto noticed the third Hokage standing in the balcony. The Hokage raised a hand up, commanding the crowd to settle down. Immediately the crowd went silent and he cleared his throat a bit before speaking. Welcome everyone to the finals of the Chunin exams. Loud cheers went throughout the stadium. We will now begin the main matches with the 12 genin that have come this far. Please enjoy the matches and I wish all the contestants the very best. The crowd continued cheering loudly after the Hokage's welcome speech and Naruto could feel the anticipation in the air. Meanwhile, Aoba looked at the contestants in front of him and spoke. Before we start, you need to check out who you're going up against. You're each going to participate as an individual. He pointed toward the display screen. The pair-ups will be shown on the screens in a moment for the first round. All the contestants looked at the screens closely as they turned on, and then looked at their opponents. The first match was going to be between Naruto Uzumaki of Konoha against a genin from Kumo. Naruto looked at the boy. He was from the Kumogakure village, and looked 4 to 5 years older than himself. If Naruto remembered correctly, this boy was one of the favorites in this tournament. But to Naruto, the boy looked average. But he also knew he should never underestimate any opponent. Aoba again called out to get their attention. Alright. The first match will be Naruto Uzumaki versus Yashara of the Hidden Cloud Village. The rest of you need to go back to the waiting room. Both the genin stepped forward and looked at each other, while the rest of the genins nodded and started to move. Hana and Yugao both wished Naruto luck before they left to wait for their turn. Now only the referee, Naruto, and his opponent Yashara stood on the battlefield looking at each other. Yashara was standing lazily and didn't look interested at all. Naruto stared at him in confusion. Before starting the fight, Aoba spoke again. There are absolutely no rules for how to fight. The contest continues until one will admit defeat. However, when I judge that continuation is impossible, the match will be stopped there. You both understand. Stands. The Hokage sat in the stands and waited for the fight to start. He was showing his professional expression, but on the inside, he was very excited to see Naruto show off some of his skills. To his side, his advisors were also sitting with his former teammates and some of the clan heads, such as Hyuga, Inuzuka, Nara, Akamichi, Aburame and Yamanaka. Everyone was here to see the potential of the young shinobi. I am very excited to see what your student can do, Shikaku. I have heard quite a bit about him, Inoichi Yamanaka said. Before Shikaku could respond, Danzo spoke. I'm also looking forward to seeing what he can do. He has been excellent throughout the tournament so far. Everyone is looking forward to seeing him in action, Hiruzen said. Since the news of him and his team breaking the record of Minato Namikaze, they've been the center of attention, especially Naruto. He looked down on the battlefield to see Aoba explaining the rules to the two genins. It'll not be easy from here for him. Hamura stated. His opponent Yashara is considered quite strong in his village. Also the boy is much more experienced than Naruto. Some of the others in the room nodded. I can assure you all that my student can handle himself very well, Shikaku said confidently. Some often underestimate him for his age and he just takes advantage of that. Well then it'll be good to see what the Prodigy of the Hidden Leaf can do up against the Prodigy of the Hidden Cloud. Danzo spoke with a barely visible smirk on his face. This match was what he had come to see. Show me what you can do, Naruto Uzumaki, he thought. But he failed to notice the narrowed look from Shikaku Nara, who was keeping a close look on him. Field. Back on the field, the opponents stood facing each other. The whole crowd watched in anticipation for the fight to start. By this time, Yashara had yawned a number of times, to the point where Naruto wondered if he might actually fall asleep on the spot, and whether he would be able to fight like that. Maybe we should have them push our turn back, so you can get a proper sleep. Naruto asked his opponent. Yashara looked at Naruto, his eyelids hanging halfway over his perfectly round eyes. No need to worry, he said to Naruto, smiling, but even his smile looked sleepy. Naruto couldn't do anything other than nod at him. He wondered if his opponent was doing it on purpose. If he wasn't, it was apparent the boy was not taking him seriously. First round, third exam, Konohagakure Ninja Naruto Uzumaki against Kumogakure Ninja Yashara. Start. The proctor shouted. Ha! Yashara opened his mouth in a great yawn as the start signal was given. There was a smattering of whispered laughter in the venue. Naruto frowned. Yashara was insulting him with his behavior. Getting into position, Naruto leaned forward slightly and braced his feet. He had no weapons in either hand. He relaxed his entire body and set his awareness adrift, not concentrating on any particular spot. He was ready to react immediately, no matter what his opponent did. I'm so sleepy. Yashara stood up straight, arms dangling loosely at his sides, looking as though he was not in any kind of ready position, and then started to wobble from side to side. If you're not going to fight, then maybe you should give up, Naruto said, annoyed. But before Naruto's response had even been completed, Yashara's eyes closed and his stiff body pitched forward, like a stick falling to the earth. And suddenly, before he slammed into the ground, he was gone. Naruto's eyes widened in surprise and he took a sharp breath. Where did he go? There had been no hint of movement in his opponent. His action was too sudden. He hadn't seemed to be shifting his weight to either side. A snore then came from behind. Thunder. Naruto immediately tumbled forward in a somersault only a split second before Yashara's right arm flew past the front of his face with incredible force, white electricity turning into countless bolts of lightning all the way up to the shoulder. So he has lightning affinity. Though it's to be expected since he's from Kumo, Naruto thought as he landed, getting some distance from his opponent. He was cursing himself for losing his concentration. He could have been defeated in a single move if he had been hit by that lighting-covered arm. But when Naruto spun to face Yashara, he was astounded to see that the Kumo genin remained asleep. Was it an act? Or was he really sleeping? There's no way he can fight while sleeping, Naruto thought. But he was. The only way to find out was to attack him directly. Naruto pulled a kunai from his kunai pouch and in the flash of a movement, threw it straight toward the face of the sleeping Yashara. His body, rocking from side to side, shook violently, and just barely dodged the kunai. He has to be awake, Naruto thought. But the boy's eyes remained closed, making Naruto's Sharingan useless. Even if Yashara's eyes were open, though, Naruto wasn't sure he wanted to show too much in his first fight. He also didn't want to waste too much of his chakra. Yashara stood upright, still sleeping, as though the attack of the previous moment hadn't happened. Just when Naruto noticed him swaying violently once more, Yashara disappeared from his field of view again. Faster than the eye could follow, Naruto shot up into the sky, just before Yashara's lightning-covered arms swept through the spot where Naruto had been standing. Landing near the wall to put some space between them, Naruto caught his enemy in his field of view. His thoughts were racing at a dizzying speed. In the formula for an overwhelming victory, the Sharingan was essential. But he needed to keep it aside until that time came. But he was also confident he could unravel the phenomenon of Yashara's sleeping jutsu without it. Think. He stared at Yashara, wobbling off in the distance. He had to assume that his enemy was using a type of technique that brought out the full potential of his physical abilities through the selfless state of mind that was sleep. By sleeping, he kept his ego in check, and he could carry out specialized movements through pure instinct and animal intuition alone. His opponent's somnolence had surprised him, so he had lost sight of the fact that this fight was basically about physical abilities. If he simply concentrated on his physical abilities, he could easily stand in the same arena as this boy. He focused all his attention on the enemy before his eyes. Wobbly Yashara twitched. He was coming. Vision, hearing, scent, all his senses went into full gear. He felt Yashara with everything he had. He caught his aura tracing the walls to his right. Lightning. He dodged. So I'm physically superior, after all, Naruto realized. Once he knew that, it was possible to deal with this. With flowing movements, He evaded the attacks launched from Yashura's selfless dream state. He then had a flash of insight. Why did his enemy specialize in a technique that relies on sleeping? Naruto imagined what his enemy thought about while he was asleep. If he was sealing away his self to increase his physical abilities, then there was the real possibility that he lost his memory, as well. If that were true, then Yashura didn't remember the self who fought. If I can wake him up, I can win, Naruto thought. But why did Yashura need a technique like that? He wondered if Yashura was a coward. If the boy was escaping into sleep because he was afraid of being hurt. If Yashura was a coward, maybe he was afraid of the endless sleep, the one he never woke up from. You had to have your eyes open to carefully examine a situation. That moment would clinch his victory, Naruto knew. The back and forth of Yashura attacking and Naruto dodging lasted about 10 minutes, and just when people in the arena were starting to fuss about the lack of any real developments, it happened. Yashura stopped abruptly, shook faintly, and lifted his closed eyelids the tiniest bit. Their eyes met. This was the moment Naruto had been waiting for. He poured his chakra into his eyes. The Sharingan was activated but still hidden from the world. It took less than 1/100th of a second to activate, and Naruto was betting on that moment. He hammered into Yashura's pupils the detailed image he had drawn in his mind while dodging attacks. Yashura shrieked. Awake for a mere instant, he fell asleep once more. I did it. He slipped around from the rear, and slit Yashura's throat with his kunai. It was the image Naruto had imagined so faithfully, down to the very last details. And it became reality in his enemy's mind. He was dead, his throat slashed. He opened his eyes again. He apparently couldn't sleep as soundly anymore. Yashura tried to fight, and Naruto dodged the ineffective attacks for a few minutes before his opponent closed his eyes again. He was probably trying to activate his sleeping state again. But Naruto knew that as soon as Yashura closed his eyes, his field of view would be dyed red. This time, the image was of Naruto gouging into his stomach. Each time he was killed, Yashura's sleep grew lighter. Stabbed, strangled, beaten, poisoned. Naruto killed the boy any and every way possible. Finally, Yashura stopped trying to sleep at all. If he closed his eyes, he would die again. Naruto was sure that after being subjected to brutal deaths over and over and over, his opponent was now completely ruled by his fear of the final sleep. Chest heaving, almost hyperventilating, Yashura trembled and shook. Naruto continued to evade his attacks, while Yashura's movements gradually grew sluggish. Sweat streamed down his face. He started to cry, and Naruto hadn't once used a physical attack on him. Help me, Yashura groaned in supplication. He fell to his knees and began weeping loudly. I don't want to die anymore. Please, help me, please. We have a winner. The examiner stepped in between the two of them. Naruto Uzumaki of Konohagakure. The arena fell silent. Everyone seemed to be confused by the situation. Yashura wailed and wept until he was carried out in the examiner's arms. I don't want to die, he cried over and over, the terror in his voice reaching into every nook and cranny of the stadium, sending shivers up spines. He would probably give up on being a ninja now, Naruto thought. That was the level of fear that had been put into him. The venue felt the same. Naruto had, all by himself, produced the aura of death that wafted through the entire arena. He wasn't sure how many people there had realized he had been using genjutsu on his opponent. It didn't matter. Naruto had demonstrated incomprehensible power, and the ninja from all lands now knew his unfathomable strength. We mustn't make an enemy of this boy. Naruto felt bad for Yashura. After it was over, he knew he had gone too far. But he had to win without showing much of his other abilities. And that had been the only way he could think of. Naruto looked at the balcony where the Hokage and some of the Konoha higher officials were sitting. He then turned his back on the arena and walked towards the waiting area where the rest of the contestants were present. In the silence, he could hear someone clapping. He lifted his head and looked in the direction of the sound. A face, covered on the right side with bandages. Danzo Shimura, Naruto murmured, not attaching any of the honorifics he should have to the name. Stands. I must say, I'm impressed with your student Shikaku, Hiyashi Hyuga, head of the Hyuga clan stated. Troublesome. Shikaku muttered lazily. That brat went overboard. Hiruzen nodded, but his face was troubled. He fought well, but he shouldn't have done what he did to that boy. Don't be foolish, Hiruzen. Danzo spoke a little loudly. He performed extraordinary and put a fear in the enemy's mind. Even on the defense, he was far ahead of the enemy. He has my vote for the promotion. I agree with Danzo-sama. He used great tactics against his opponent, Inoichi Yamanaka said. But how was he able to cast a genjutsu on his opponent? Hamura asked. I didn't even see him use any hand seal for the genjutsu. They looked at Shikaku for an explanation, who shrugged. I don't think I should tell my students' tricks to anyone else, he responded. We'll have more chances to see him fight again. But for now we should look forward to the next match. Hiruzen spoke, not wanting any of them to find out about Naruto. Waiting area. When Naruto walked in the contestant booth, all the present genin except his teammates were looking at him uncomfortably. He quietly came to stand beside his teammates, not minding the looks. Hana and Yugao looked at him before shaking their heads. Don't you think you went overboard there? Hana asked with her arms folded. Naruto leaned towards the railing before responding. I know, but I couldn't think of any other way to fight him without showing too much. You should learn when to hold back, Naruto, Yugao said with a shake of her head. Naruto shrugged his shoulders. He knew what he had done was not right. But he had to win, and Shinobi use whatever method they can to gain upper hand in battle. Also, it wasn't his fault that his opponent was weak-minded. He should have come prepared for anything. Stopping their conversation for a while, they looked towards the battlefield where the next fight was about to start. It was between Izumo of Konohagakure and someone from Takigakure. As the fight started, both genin attacked each other and the whole crowd cheered loudly. The dark and unsettling atmosphere was gone, and the expectant and cheerful atmosphere was back. The fight went on for some more minutes before Izumo was too exhausted and was unable to continue. The genin from Takigakure was declared the winner. Next fight, Yugao Azuki vs. Inari of Kumogakure. The examiner shouted. Naruto smirked at her when her name was called out. He was looking forward to how she'd fight. She was strong in Naruto's opinion, and he knew it would not be easy to defeat her. Also, her sword skills were far better than his and maybe better than all the contestants. Good luck, Yugao, Naruto said with a smile. She smiled in return. Don't forget, I want to fight you in the finals. So be prepared. First you have to win this fight. So go away, Purple-chan. Naruto responded with a smirk and made a motion with his hand for her to go away. Yugao just shook her head with a little smile and turned around to walk off confidentially, but not before thanking Hana, who wished her luck. Naruto and Hana looked closely as they watched Yugao's match about to start. Naruto had full confidence that Yugao would win. As the examiner signaled start, they watched Yugao standing in battle-ready stance as she waited for her opponent to make the move first. Naruto was confused by this tactic. Hana must have noticed his look because she then spoke. Is something wrong? Naruto pointed towards Yugao. I thought she would use her sword to finish this fight early. But she hasn't even taken it out. Who knows, maybe she doesn't want to show that in the early stages, Hana responded with a shrug. They continued to watch her fight as she dodged her opponent's strikes gracefully. Her movement looked so perfect that Naruto thought she looked like she was dancing on the field. This went on for several more minutes. She's trying to make her opponent tired by being on defense and allowing him to think that he's the one who's forcing her back. Hana pointed out. Naruto nodded in agreement and smirked. She always tries to think one step ahead of her enemy. She's saving her energy for her next match. Yugao continued to block and dodge her opponent's attacks. By now, her opponent was breathing a little heavier than before, and capitalizing on it. Yugao then suddenly attacked him head-on. Her movements were faster than before and her opponent had a hard time blocking her, which resulted in him receiving some hard strikes. At the end, Yugao was comfortably able to defeat her opponent, who by that time was lying flat, beat down. The examiner announced her the winner while the medic took the injured genin off the field. Then the examiner called out for the next match. Naruto and Hana both congratulated Yugao happily when she joined them again. You did well. Naruto complimented her. The next match was between Hayate and another genin from Kumo. The fight was interesting while it lasted. Hayate was immersive in the fight and far superior in terms of strength and planning, and because of that he was able to defeat his opponent comfortably in the end. Next, Hana Inuzuka vs. Katetsu. The examiner shouted. The match between Hana and Katetsu was evenly balanced. Both matched each other strike for strike, and the fight went on for some time until eventually both contestants were exhausted and injured. But because of Hana's advantage in taijutsu, she was able to finally corner Katetsu. The referee saw that Katetsu was unable to continue and ended the match in Hana's favor. But Naruto could see how badly Hana was injured and wasn't surprised when she then announced she would withdraw from the tournament because of her injuries. Chunin Exam Finals Round 2, Naruto Uzumaki vs. Hero of Takigakure. The examiner announced. Naruto glanced over at his opponent standing at the side and saw him looking back nervously. Well, all the best, Yugao said. Naruto nodded in response, but just as he was about to walk off, he heard his opponent shout to the proctor. I want to withdraw. Naruto Uzumaki has won by default and will advance into the final, the proctor announced, and the crowd shouted in disappointment. Next contestant, Yugao Azuki vs. Hayate Gecko. Well, you got a free pass to the finals, huh? Yugao commented, and Naruto chuckled nervously, rubbing the back of his neck. She shook her head. I guess I should get going now. I can't wait to kick you in the finals. He snorted at her comment and watched her walk off. Yugao. He shouted to get her attention. I really do want to fight you in the finals. So you better not lose now. As I promised you, Naruto, I will be the one fighting you in the finals. She then looked at Hayate with a hard glare and left. Naruto also looked at Hayate, who was not standing too far from him, and could tell that the other genin was not happy with him for some reason. Naruto nodded at him, but Hayate simply left without a response. As far as Naruto could remember, he hadn't done anything to offend him. He came out of his thoughts as Hana joined him. Oh, it's those two. This is definitely going to be interesting. She had some bandages wrapped on her injuries. Did something happen between them? Naruto asked. I think he said something about you to Yugao after the second exam, which she didn't like and got in an argument with him. Hana responded with a shrug. Naruto raised an eyebrow in confusion. He couldn't think why Hayate would say anything about him. But he just shrugged it off. They're about start, Hana stated. Cheers erupted from the stadium as the examiner eyed both contestants and shouted for the fight to start. Get ready to lose, Yugao, Hayate said, facing her in his battle stance. A slight frown was Yugao's only reaction as she faced him, her own stance calm and firm. She still hadn't forgiven him for his comment about her relationship with Naruto, or for saying that Naruto had no emotions and cared for no one but himself. Hayate simply didn't know him like she did. She wasn't stupid and knew Hayate had liked her as more than friends since their academy days when they had trained together. She also knew it had upset him when Naruto had come along and she had started spending her training time with him. But that didn't mean something was going on between them. Like Hayate, Naruto was a good friend and nothing more. Besides, Naruto was 3 years younger than her. If anything, that should make Hayate understand that there was nothing more between them than friendship. And even if there had been something going on, it didn't give Hayate the right to say the things he had said. Just because he liked her didn't mean she had to like him back. And after what he'd said, she wasn't sure she could even call him a friend anymore. But if he wanted to give up their friendship, fine. She didn't have time to worry about relationships this early in her life anyway. She was a kunoichi and had to focus on her training and goals if she wanted to make her family proud and become the strongest kunoichi possible. She had to prove that you don't need a kekkei genkei or to be from a wealthy clan to be strong. And this tournament was her chance to showcase her strength against some of the best genin in the world and to see where she stood compared to them in terms of skills. That's why she had to fight Naruto. He was a prodigy, there was no denying that, but she also wanted to make herself known to the world. People only saw her and Hana as teammates of the child prodigy, and that annoyed her. She wasn't jealous of him, but she wanted to stand with him as an equal, not as second or third best. He was her rival, the one who could force her to break past her barriers, and she wanted to beat him. She took a deep breath and leaned forward in battle-ready stance, holding her sword vertically in front of her face. She had to be smart. Hayate was strong and she couldn't afford to make any careless mistakes. She had to make the first move and put him on the defensive. Eyeing Hayate for only a moment, she vanished from her place, reappearing within seconds mere inches away from him, her sword making a sweeping arc toward his head. Hayate's eyes widened in surprise, but he managed to block her attack without much difficulty, his blade clanging as it met the steel of hers, before using it to push her away. Yugao immediately backflipped to put some distance between them, but from the air she launched a couple shuriken in his direction, and as the wind whipped through her hair, she formed a hand sign and shouted, "Ninja art, Shadow Shuriken Jutsu." A barrage of shuriken suddenly rained down on Hayate as he jumped back to avoid them. The weapons thumped into the dirt and Yugao landed and spun to face him, her heart pounding. A second later, she charged forward again, and their blades clashed together with jarring force. "It seems we're finally going to see who the better Kenjutsu user is between us," Hayate taunted as he slashed his blade toward her. "You can try all you want, Hayate, but in the end I'll be the one walking away from this fight as the winner." Bold words. I wonder, are they arrogance or confidence? Hayate said as he parried another strike from her. "Tchh. Believe what you want, it doesn't matter to me." They both continued to exchange blow after blow and the sound of their swords clanging together could be heard throughout the stadium. "She has to do something else. They look evenly matched in Kenjutsu," Hana commented as she stood with Naruto in the stands. Naruto shook his head, confused. "True, but you know she can do better than that. I don't know why, but she's holding back and not going all out. She hasn't even used any jutsu yet, other than Shadow Shuriken Jutsu." He had fought her many times during training and knew she wasn't a pushover and could do amazing things with her blade. But ever since the fight had started, despite her initial charge, he could see that Yugao was on the defense. She was normally someone who would try to use any advantage she could get and finish the fight as fast as possible. What reason could she have to change her style now? Hana nodded. "I hope she doesn't get overconfident. I hope Yugao wins this match. I want to fight her in the finals," he muttered quietly as he watched her block another hard kick from Hayate. On the field, breathing heavy, Hayate blocked another strike from Yugao's blade and twisted his body sideways to drive a chakra-enhanced kick to her stomach. The blow sent her flying back and he didn't stop his attack there. Jumping forward to cover the distance, he swung his sword downward toward her. Tumbling to the side, Yugao dodged his strike at the last second. Quickly gaining her balance, she raised her own sword, but Hayate jumped back to put some space between them. "Fire style. Fireball jutsu," he shouted as a medium-sized ball of flame erupted from his mouth. Yugao's eyes widened as the fireball raced toward her. She wouldn't be able to counter it in time. Boom. Smoke covered the field and blanketed the arena in a blinding haze. Hayate waited. The jutsu he had used wasn't strong enough to seriously harm her, but he knew she couldn't outrun it. But when the smoke cleared, he growled in disappointment. There was no sign of Yugao, and in her place only a burnt log lay in the dust. "Shit. She used a kawarimi at the last second," he mumbled as he looked around the field for any sign of her. Suddenly he felt a presence behind him and spun as fast as possible to see Yugao coming at him to strike. He tried to jump back to avoid the attack, but the blow sliced a light cut across his chest. Landing a few feet back, he looked at the wound in surprise. It wasn't deep, but blood trickled down the front of his vest. "Still think of me as someone weak," Yugao said with a smirk. "You've gotten stronger since the last time we fought, but I never thought of you as someone weak," Hayate said, holding her gaze. "I'm still standing though, and the fight isn't over yet. It's just a matter of time," Yugao countered, and before the last word was out of her mouth, she channeled chakra to her feet and sprinted forward, swiping her blade left and right in a blinding barrage of swings as she advanced on him. Hayate leapt back in retreat. He suddenly couldn't keep up with her speed, but knew very well that she couldn't drag this attack out long. If she did, the chakra drain would be the end of her. He needed to conserve his own energy. No one knew how much time they'd get to rest after the match, and Naruto would come in fresh to the final fight, already putting his opponent at a disadvantage. Sparks flew from their swords as their steel made contact. Yugao was aiming for his vital spots as much as possible, and her flexibility was definitely an advantage. Hayate was nimble too, but it was all he could do to maneuver away from her unexpected speed. Cuts and bruises covered both of their bodies, and Hayate was sure Yugao was tiring. On her next swing, he seized the advantage and lunged. Their blades clashed in a grinding of steel, sliding till they locked at the hilts in a stalemate. Inches from each other, He felt her breath on his face as her chest heaved with the effort to gain the dominance. Tightening his grip, Hayate used his superior strength to shove her back. The force bent Yugao's arm and forced her to drop her sword. Seizing the position, he followed with a hard kick to her abdomen, sending her reeling. Almost instantly, Yugao bounded to her feet and her lips twisted upwards into a small smile. With a sudden sprint, she formed hand seals and shouted, "Water style, water missile." Water streamed from her mouth and Hayate barely dodged the attack before Yugao charged at him again, even faster. Pain suddenly exploded across his wrist as her foot connected in a kick to the bone, and his sword flew from his grip. He tried a roundhouse kick to her side, but she grabbed his foot and delivered a swift knee to his stomach. The blow knocked the wind out him and he gasped for breath as he tried to reach for his sword. How did she get so fast? It doesn't seem possible, he thought. He was having trouble following her movements. He tried to kick her sideways, but to his surprise, she blocked with little effort. She then countered with her own roundhouse kick to his stomach and he was launched backwards, slamming hard against the wall. Sliding down, Hayate clenched his gut and collapsed to his knees. What did you do to me? He asked, spitting blood. But it wasn't Yugao who had been faster than normal, he realized. He had somehow become slower as the fight had progressed. He'd read her movements but had been unable to counter in time. It was like his body had stopped responding to his mind. You finally noticed. As I said before, it was just matter of time. Yugao considered his condition and relaxed her stance. My sword's coated with poison. All I needed was that single cut and the poison did the rest. He stared at her in shock. Don't worry, it won't kill you. But your body will be useless for the next 2 or 3 hours. Damn why you Yugao. Hayate grunted in pain, more and more unable to move his body. The only chance you had to defeat me was before the poison could spread through your body. But even if by some miracle you had succeeded in defeating me, you would have been useless in a fight against Naruto in the final. Yugao then looked at the examiner to announce the winner. The examiner jumped between them, seeming impressed, before turning to Yugao and shouting, "Winner Yugao Azuki." A grin appeared on Yugao's face and the stadium burst into loud applause. Hokage's stand. As the preparation for the final match was underway, the Hokage discussed the performance of the young contestants with his advisors and clan heads. The younger generation has shown quite a lot of promise. Already they've shown good knowledge of ninjutsu and excellent use of tactics. Danzo nodded with an impassive look on his face. Indeed, that is true. They certainly earned their promotions. Shikaku, you deserve a round of applause for training your squad so well, Hiruzen said. 2 of your students are in the finals and even Hana performed very well in her match, despite forfeiting early. Some of the clan heads laughed at the Hokage's comment, especially Sume Inuzuka, the clan head of the Inuzuka clan. Yeah, you surprised me Shikaku, she said with giggle. I was quite worried for my Hana's training when I first learned of you being her sensei, what with your lazy attitude. I never thought you'd be successful with a genin squad Shikaku, the Yamanaka clan head said in a joking manner. Shikaku snorted. I don't know if you're complimenting or insulting me. Well, on a serious note Shikaku, Hiruzen interrupted. I am very impressed with the work you put into your team. Not only did your squad perform exceptionally well, but it also has the highest rate of successful missions among all the genin teams this year. I didn't do much Hokage-sama. The 3 of them are naturals and most importantly they are hard-working and understand each other as teammates. I'm just a proud sensei watching them progressing as ninjas. Indeed, they're on the right track. But Hiruzen, Kaharu spoke suddenly. Is it wise to give this much freedom to Naruto? What are you trying to say, Kaharu? Hiruzen asked, a warning tone in his voice. He'd already had these arguments about Naruto's future with his advisors in the past. You do understand that we can't risk him. He's already getting too much attention from people. If word gets out about him being a Jinchuriki, our village will be at a huge risk. I somewhat agree with her, Homaru commented. There are spies from all over the nations in the crowds. They could get information and be potential threats to our village and it's clear they have eyes on Naruto. Hiruzen knew all the risks regarding Naruto but he also understood that he couldn't hide the boy forever. Naruto had to fight his fights alone just like everybody else. Hiruzen's voice was calm as he responded. So, You are suggesting we should lock him up in a cage and only use him as some kind of weapon against enemies. Kaharu shook her head. No, I don't mean that. I'm just saying we've seen enough of him already to promote him to a rank of Chunin. So wouldn't it be wise to pull him out now? I don't like the way you're talking about my student. Shikaku said and glared at Kaharu. Besides, we shouldn't risk upsetting the clients and feudal lords. Shikaku typically didn't try to get in useless arguments with the elders, as he knew that whatever he or anyone said it would usually fall on deaf ears. And for the most part, there wasn't much he ever got worked up about enough to bother. But he couldn't ignore negative comments about the village, his family, or his students. I don't see any problem in letting the tournament continue, Danzo said with his usual emotionless tone. We've just started recovering from the loss of the Uchiha clan. We can't forget that not too long ago we were at the verge of a war with Kumo. The kid is showing off our village's power to the world. We can use his growing reputation to our advantage. But the kid you're talking about is our Jinchuriki, Hamura said. We also can't risk that. He is our village property. Minato did not seal a biju in his own son for the village to use him as a war machine, Shikaku argued. He is my student and I will not allow any of you to get in his or any of my students' way. Whatever his reasons may have been, the fourth left us a powerful tool, Danzo continued, as if Shikaku had not spoken. We should use it to its full potential. His comment earned him both angry looks and nods from the clan heads. He is nobody's tool. Shikaku had reached his boiling point after that comment. Enough. Hiruzen roared with command as he shot a hard glare to Danzo and his other two advisors. I've had enough of this. Be very careful what you say in front of me, Danzo. Looking to the others, he continued. Besides, this is not a time or a place to have this conversation. We are here to see our genin perform, so I don't want to hear any more arguments on this matter. Am I clear? Nobody spoke after that, and after a long silence, Shikaku stood and decided to leave. Inoichi Yamanaka, who was sitting beside him, raised his eyebrows. Where are you going now, Shikaku? Shikaku didn't reply at first and kept walking, but after a moment, he spoke. For a walk. He is getting quite attached to the kid. Danzo whispered to Hiruzen after Shikaku had left. The Hokage only shrugged his shoulders and gave a shake of his head. Scene break. Yugao sat on a bed in the medical room while a medic nin hovered over her injuries. She knew she needed to rest, but her mind was racing with strategies and plans for her fight against Naruto. She had fought against him countless times during training sessions, so she knew his fighting style better than anyone else in the tournament, but he also knew her fighting style better than any of his opponents. Her fists clenched at her sides. She didn't want to lose after coming this far and be known as second best to Naruto. Yugao glanced at her sword. It had been developed with the help of her sensei, after the famous sword of Kusanagi that was now in the possession of Orochimaru of the Sannin. But after her fight with Hayate, she had lost the element of surprise it might have given her against Naruto. He had seen what she could do with it, and he would be more careful and prepared. The sound of the door opening pulled her from her thoughts and she was surprised when she saw who had entered. Sensei. What are you doing here? What? Can't I visit my students? Shikaku asked. Yugao rolled her eyes. Of course you can. I just thought it'd be too troublesome for you to visit us. Shikaku put his hand on the back of his neck in apparent embarrassment. Well, anyway, I only wanted to offer my congratulations on making it this far. Yugao smirked. Thanks, sensei, but you can congratulate me after I beat Naruto. Troublesome. Don't lose your concentration during the fight. You are already at a disadvantage. Naruto will come fully fresh and make sure you don't fall to his mind games. Yugao glared at him. Thanks for the boost of confidence, sensei. Whose side are you on anyway? There's no need for snapping at me, Purple-chan. Both of you are my students and no matter what happens from here, I'm already proud of you. Shikaku smiled and patted her head. Have you talked with Naruto and Hana? She asked. Well, not yet, I was going to after I'm done with you. And just so you know, you've already done enough to impress the higher-ups. So don't overdo anything and make any silly mistakes. There's no need to turn this match into some kind of personal competition. Yugao looked down at the floor and muttered softly, but I don't want to be known as the second best to anyone. Shikaku sighed and shook his head. He then placed a comforting hand on her shoulder. He knew Yugao and Hana sometimes felt insecure to Naruto and didn't get enough credit for their efforts or actions. No one can be best in the world at everything. And when you start considering yourself as best, there will be no room for improvement. Just keep this in mind. There are things that you are good at and there are things that others are good at. That's why we have friends and teammates. We cover each other's weaknesses and move forward in life together. Yugao nodded. I promise I'll do my best, sensei. Well, remember that no matter what the result may be, you and Naruto will always be winners to me. Shikaku smiled. Anyway, I should be going now. I'll see you later. Scene break. How did you not know that she was going to use something like that in her fight? Naruto asked with a frown as he sat with Hana. Hana sighed. I'm telling you, Naruto, I really don't know how she developed that. All I know is that she had been working on some techniques with sensei long before the Chunin exam started. Then you should have told me something about it. Sorry to disappoint, but I don't go around gossiping about others. Besides, what's wrong if Yugao wanted it to be kept secret? Hana asked with an irritated expression. Because that could have cost me if I'd fought her at an earlier stage, Naruto answered. He'd had some doubts when he saw her fighting completely different from her usual style. But he would have never thought that she'd planned something that fishy. He was glad he hadn't fought her earlier. You're one to talk, Naruto. You've been hiding something far greater than she has. Don't think I don't know how you defeated your opponent. But I stay out of it. Just remember, there's no difference between you and her. Naruto only stared at her for a moment, his face expressionless. He had no response to what she had said, so he finally folded his arms and looked away. Hana looked at him with an amused smile on his shoulder. Naruto, are you pouting? Naruto glared at her. Stop talking nonsense, you troublesome woman. Hana slapped the back of his head. Don't say troublesome, you idiot. You're picking up bad habits from sensei. Naruto grunted in annoyance and was about to retort when he heard a familiar voice. Who's picking up what from who? Naruto and Hana both turned their heads toward the voice in surprise. Sensei. Why are you kids so surprised looking at me? Shikaku asked with his usual lazy expression. Shouldn't you be with the rest of the clan heads, sensei? Hana asked. Shikaku responded with a shrug. Thought it would be good to check on you brats. Have you visited Yugao? Hana asked, and Shikaku nodded in reply. Then, can I go and visit her sensei? Hana spoke hopefully. Well, if you want to, you can go meet her. Hana grinned and turned to face Naruto. I'll see you later, Naruto. Good luck in your match. With that, she ran off toward the medical room. So, what happened, sensei? Naruto asked. You look like something's bothering you. Shikaku folded his arms. It's just too troublesome to sit with the council for so long. Naruto smiled. Hee hee. So the old people are giving you a hard time. Troublesome. Shikaku muttered with a shake of his head. It's nothing you should worry about. If you say so. Shikaku was quiet for some time before he spoke again. Just be careful how you use your surprise, Naruto. People are not stupid, and we don't want anyone getting suspicious of you. Don't worry about it, sensei. I'm not careless, Naruto assured him. In fact, I wanted to avoid using it. I want to test myself against others without depending on it. I also don't want to reveal too much in the first round. I'm not saying you shouldn't use your tools, Naruto. You should use whatever advantage you can in a fight. But also don't depend on it too much. I've seen too many people going mad for power. It's all up to you how you use it. Naruto made no response. Shikaku smiled and ruffled Naruto's hair. Anyway, whatever the result may be, I'm proud of all my students and I couldn't have asked for anything better than this. An hour later, Naruto was standing near the entrance to the field, his arms folded and his back resting against the wall. The break was almost over. Any minute now they would be called for their final match. He knew he had a very good chance of getting promoted to Chunin now, as long as he didn't do anything unnecessary which would leave a bad impression on the crowd. But still, the biggest challenge for him was Yugao. People may call him overconfident or whatever they wanted, but the truth was that no one could give him much of a challenge other than his teammates. It wouldn't be easy to go up against her. Any mistake on his part could cause his defeat. Naruto was just glad he hadn't ended up against his teammates in early rounds. That would have been very troublesome for him. He heard footsteps coming towards him and glanced to his side to see Yugao approaching. There was no trace of nervousness on her face. Instead, her eyes were alight with excitement. Took you long enough. Hope you're not afraid, Yugao. Yugao smirked. Trying to make me nervous. It won't work, Naruto-kun. Good to know. I'd be disappointed if you broke down so easily. Well, I hope your punches are good as your threats, Naruto-kun. Yugao stated without dropping her smirk. Naruto couldn't stop a smile forming on his face. Good luck, idiot. After being called out by the proctor, Naruto and Yugao faced each other as the crowd roared in excitement. The examiner looked at both, gave them the signal to get ready and then spoke loudly. The final match of this year's Chunin exam is between Naruto Uzumaki and Yugao Azuki. Begin. Naruto and Yugao immediately took their stances and eyed each other. Each waited for the other to make the first move. Not going to make a move, Yugao. Finally realizing you won't be able to beat me. Naruto grinned. He knew he could usually get her riled up and he figured he'd try to put it to use on the battlefield. It won't work, Naruto. You can try all you want. You're just worried I'll bruise that pretty face of yours. Yugao had that constant smirk on her face, but he knew she was scanning for any openings in his defense. Naruto tilted his head to the side. Oh, so, my face is pretty now, huh? Shut up, idiot. Yugao said with a stutter and a blush adorning her face. As always, you only hear what you want to hear. Get ready to lose, Naruto. Ha 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 ha. Naruto laughed. Go ahead and try, Purple-chan, you won't get the better of me. We'll see about that, shorty. Yugao muttered and suddenly rushed toward Naruto with impressive speed, slashing her blade as she neared. Naruto blocked her first attack and kicked her back to get some distance between them. I'm no fool, Yugao. Letting you in close wouldn't be good as long as you're using that sword of yours. Then try to keep me away. Yugao chuckled and rushed back in. Naruto ducked out of the way, allowing his muscles to relax and his body to warm up. As he continued to block and dodge more of her attacks, he grunted in annoyance. He had to be careful that she didn't cut anything. Even one scratch would make him lose the fight. That sword of yours is really annoying. Yugao grinned and made another strike at him. I made this especially for you, so I'm glad you're enjoying yourself. Naruto jumped back to gain a distance between them and immediately began tossing out kunai. Yugao dodged them easily. Don't tell me this is your best, Naruto. How many times have I told you to never underestimate an opponent? Naruto waved through a series of hand signs. Lightning style. 4-pillar prison. Electricity shot out of the 4 kunai that sailed near her, trapping her in the middle. Yugao yelled in pain as electric currents shot through her body. Within seconds, she fell to the ground, smoke rising from the burn marks on her body. But a moment later, Naruto's eyes widened when Yugao's body exploded in puff of smoke. When did she switch herself with a shadow clone? Naruto searched the field with his eyes but saw no trace of Yugao. She had to be beneath him. Not a second too soon, he jumped high as a hand broke through the ground with a kunai aimed at his neck. Shit, was all Naruto could think when again he saw the hand explode in smoke. Before he could change his trajectory, Yugao appeared above him and delivered a bone-crushing kick to his back that knocked his sword from his hand and sent him rocketing toward the ground. Yugao landed a little distance from him. You forgot. Always pay close attention to your surroundings. Naruto grunted in pain and stood back up as he rolled his neck and wiped the blood trailing from his lips. Don't get ahead of yourself. His sword lay off to the side and tried to reach for it. He knew engaging her in close combat without it would be suicidal. Yugao noticed and sprinted toward him before he could get to it. Moon. Cutter. She shouted and slashed her sword diagonally as an invisible force shot toward Naruto. He jumped aside just in time thanks to his Sharingan. That idiot. Named a technique after her own name. His eyes widened at the massive diagonal slash on the wall. And she almost cut me in half. Don't tell me you're scared, Naruto-kun. Yugao charged him again, thrusting her sword forward. A loud clang echoed through the stadium as both ninja passed each other and Naruto blocked her attack with a kunai. They separated for a moment before meeting with another slash. Yugao stabbed futilely at Naruto, as he sidestepped up the sword, kicked her in the face, and back-flipped as she skipped away. She charged back at him with a cry, repeatedly thrusting her sword and creating multiple destructive waves that sailed towards him. This is going nowhere and she is avoiding eye contact. Naruto muttered to himself. Each strike from Yugao narrowly missed him as it destroyed the ground at his feet. He flipped through hand signs and put his fingers to his mouth. Fire style. Fireball jutsu. But Yugao had read his attack and quickly released a storage scroll attached to her waist. As the scroll flew open, she shouted, "Release." As large wave of water flew from the scroll and collided with the fireball with a deafening boom. The crowd cheered and smoke filled the arena, blocking Naruto's view of the spectators. Again a loud clang echoed through the stadium. A moment later, when the smoke cleared, both genin could be seen matching blow after blow. Naruto tightened his grip on the kunai. I need to make this count. I only have one chance. He blocked another strike as sparks flew from the steel and they both struggled against each other. Then Naruto closed his eyes in concentration and channeled wind chakra to his kunai. A moment later, Yugao gasped when her sword was sliced in two. Jumping back in shock, she looked at her broken sword and noticed a faint blue glow emanating from Naruto's kunai. You used wind chakra in your kunai to make it sharper. She narrowed her eyes. You never succeeded in doing that before. I still can't use it properly, Naruto replied with a faint smirk. That's why I kept applying small amounts of wind chakra into it from the start of the fight. Yugao suddenly disappeared, putting Naruto on guard, before she reappeared in front of him with a kick launched toward his head. He immediately thrust his right arm out to block it, and his field of view shook with the impact. Before he could withdraw, she grabbed his right wrist and delivered a sharp elbow to his forearm, making him grunt in pain and drop his kunai. She then delivered a punch to his stomach and finished with another punch to his face, sending him backwards. He recovered by back-flipping onto his feet only to see his teammate quickly weaving signs. Water style. Great Cannonball Jutsu. Yugao shouted, and launched a giant blast of water, spitting it as strong steam from her mouth. Naruto stared at the steam of water streaking towards him, a smile pulling up his lips at the corner. She's pissed. No way. Yugao cried out as the attack ripped Naruto into a myriad of crows that attacked her all at once. As she struggled to mount a counterattack, the real Naruto ran behind her and raised a kunai to her throat. Yield. You used a substitution at a last moment. Yugao muttered. Naruto narrowed his eyes as she continued with a smirk. I think I should thank you for showing me this particular jutsu. Naruto's eyes widened and he tried to jump back in time as Yugao's body started glowing and she whispered. Great clone explosion. Her clone ripped apart and sent Naruto crashing into the wall behind him. Damn it, Yugao. Naruto said as he got up and saw Yugao coming out from behind the tree where she had been hiding. She looked exhausted. Naruto was bleeding from various parts and breathing heavily while most of Yugao's previous injuries had reopened. Meanwhile, the crowd was going crazy and cheering loudly at their performances. Come on Naruto. Let's settle this now, Yugao stated firmly. At that, both genin jumped into their stances and rushed toward each other. Meeting fist for fist and kick for kick, they met in a frenzied taijutsu battle. With chakra extending through their strikes, small shockwaves of force reverberated through their muscles and out into the arena. At once, they both pulled back chakra-infused fists and both connected with each other's cheeks. Both splattered onto the ground. Each struggling to their feet, Yugao gripped a set of kunai from her holster and launched them at Naruto, who shifted his body and let the kunai fly past. As soon as they had left her hands though, she had placed ninja wire into her mouth and pulled back on it. The wire surrounded and bound Naruto. In desperation, Naruto launched a single kunai. She avoided it and let it pass her. Just as the kunai passed though, Naruto disappeared and appeared beside her, and muttered. I'm sorry. Yugao's eyes widened. WWHAA. She couldn't complete what she was trying to say as Naruto thrust his arm forward and shouted. Rasengan. A blue swirling ball of chakra impacted her stomach and sent her thrashing into the ground as she cried out in pain. The crowd went silent. Yugao laid out on the ground motionless. The only sign that she remained conscious were the tears coming from her eyes. Naruto fell to his knees from the chakra exhaustion. The examiner jumped near them, looked at their condition, and announced, winner of the Konohagakure Chunin exam, Naruto Uzumaki. Naruto lifted his head weakly and looked around as the spectators erupted in applause. He then glanced at Yugao and a wave of regret and sadness washed over him for using that move on her. He had acted in desperation when he had seen a chance to end the fight. Ignoring everything around him, Naruto pulled himself towards her and crouched at her side. Noticing the tears, he asked softly, Yugao, are you alright? Even after all the training, I'm still weak. Yugao responded, looking at the sky. You're definitely not weak, Yugao, Naruto murmured. I almost lost to you. Yugao closed her eyes. That's not making me feel good, idiot. Naruto smiled. Come on, let's get out of here. He picked her up despite her protests and the pain in his own body, and carried her out in bride style toward the exit as the crowd cheered in the background. Hokage box. Damn that kid. He almost gave me a heart attack. Sume Inuzuka slumped back in her seat, breaking a stunned silence there. For a moment, I thought he pulled up a Harashin, until I noticed it was just a simple substitution with a kunai. Impressive indeed, both of their performances were impressive. The Hokage spoke proudly with a faint smile as he watched Naruto carry his teammate out of the stadium. That last jutsu was the signature move of our late fourth Hokage, was it not? Danzo glanced at Hiruzen. I didn't know that Jiraiya had taken on yet another student under his wings. Why don't you ask him yourself? Hiruzen pointed toward the back of the room where they saw Jiraiya leaning against the wall. Jiraiya-sama. It's not often we see you in the village. How long have you been in here? Inoichi asked in surprise. Jiraiya laughed sheepishly. Hey. Well, I'm busy with my research and all. How long have you been training the Jinchuriki, and why haven't you told anyone about it? Danzo asked. Jiraiya narrowed his eyes. I don't need your permission to take on an apprentice. It's all right, Danzo. Jiraiya had my permission, Hiruzen said, and Danzo frowned. Well, I'll see you later, sensei. I want to check on my apprentice. I have a present for him. Jiraiya gave a thumbs up to his old sensei and left the room. All the promoted genin will be given their chunin ranks tomorrow. Let them rest today, Hiruzen said, and followed Jiraiya out. I'm fine now, Naruto-kun. Just because you beat me doesn't mean you have to show me pity. You should worry about yourself. After all, I did quite a number on you. It was a few hours after the exam and Naruto, in a chair by Yugao's bedside, with his own injuries covered in bandages, sighed. I'm not showing you pity, he said in his usual calm manner. I don't have anything to do at the moment and the medical staff won't allow me to leave the hospital yet. So, you thought you could spend alone time with me, where no one can disturb us? Yugao teased. She laughed wholeheartedly upon noticing the blush creeping up Naruto's face. I'm flattered, Naruto-kun. Naruto scoffed, but when he saw Yugao's laugh turn to a grimace as she tried to hide the discomfort from her injuries, his face became downcast. She was in this condition because of him. Does it still hurt? He asked softly. Yugao sighed in annoyance. Don't look at me like that. I told you, Naruto-kun, I'm absolutely fine. I'm sorry, Naruto muttered. What? Yugao asked, confused. I said, I'm sorry. I shouldn't have used Rasengan on you. I promised Jiraiya-sensei that I would never use it against a comrade, but my mind went blank when I saw the chance to end the match and just moved on my instincts. Yugao shook her head. It doesn't matter how you defeated me. What matters is that I'm still weak, even after all the training I've been through. I seriously thought I had a good chance to defeat you this time, but it turns out I'm nowhere near you. You're definitely not weak, Yugao, Naruto insisted. The result of our match could have gone either way. You seriously kicked my this time, and besides, I'm still nowhere near you in Kenjutsu. He meant what he said. Yugao was definitely not the worst opponent he could have asked for. Yugao suddenly snapped her head up and glared at him. Speaking of Kenjutsu, you broke my sword, you dunce. Do you even have any idea how much time I spent repairing and caring for it? Naruto gulped under her glare, feeling suddenly hot. After really experiencing what she could do in a fight, he didn't want to get her mad. Don't worry, Yugao, I'll get you a new one, alright. Yugao shrugged and sighed as she leaned back and closed her eyes. I'm so tired. Naruto released the breath he'd been holding and for the first time, really looked at her. She did look exhausted, but covered in bruises and mud, her purple hair falling tangled around her face, she was still the prettiest girl he'd ever seen. The thought surprised him, and he felt the heat rise to his cheeks. Of course, he'd never tell her that. She'd never let him live it down. Thankfully, though, Yugao still lay with her eyes closed, and his momentary embarrassment had gone unnoticed. Looking at her, he saw that the bruises on her face were already turning a livid blue against her pale skin, and he felt terrible all over again. But as he was about to ask if there was anything he could get her, he noticed that her breathing had evened out, and realized she had fallen asleep. A lock of her hair had fallen across her eyes, and without thinking, Naruto reached out to gently push it away from her face. But just as his fingers touched her forehead, she jolted awake. Naruto snatched his hand back, blushing furiously. What were you doing? She looked flustered and Naruto noticed the flush on her cheeks too. Was I asleep? Oh, yeah, and you had something on your face, he stammered. Yugao blinked and reached up to her face self-consciously. I did. It's gone now. Don't worry about it, Naruto said, trying to hide his embarrassment with an annoyed tone of voice. But she must have noticed how uncomfortable he looked, because her face spread into a gentle smile as she blushed even deeper. Thanks, Naruto-kun. Yeah, sure, he said, surprised to find his heart beating faster than normal. Anyway, I should probably let you get some sleep. Just then, there was a sound at the doorway, and both of their heads snapped toward it. With surprise, Naruto saw Tsunade, Shizune, and Jiraiya standing in the doorway with Hana. Did we disturb you too? We can return later if you want, Hana spoke with amusement in her voice. How long had they been standing there? Naruto wondered. Had they seen what he'd done? But Naruto ignored his teammate's comment as if nothing were wrong, and tried to forget the unfamiliar feelings he'd had only moments before. With confusion, he said, Oh boss-san, Shizune, what are you doing here? Tsunade narrowed her eyes. She looked suspicious but he couldn't think of anything he'd done that would have made her look like that. Jiraiya, on the other hand, was wearing the biggest grin Naruto had ever seen and was shooting him a thumbs up. He also looked about ready to cry with pride. Naruto could only hope it was because of the tournament results and not because of what he might have seen between Yugao and him. What were you two doing? You both look like we walked in on something, Hana said with a playful look. Shut up, Yugao hissed with a light blush still adorning her face. He was just helping me. Helping her with what, Naruto-kun? Hana asked innocently in a sweet voice which earned her a menacing glare from her two embarrassed teammates. She had something in her eye. I was helping her get it out, Naruto said, wondering why he was even bothering explaining. Well, if you say so, Naruto-kun, Hana said, while trying to hold her laugh. Tsunade rubbed her temples and let out a huge sigh before turning her attention towards Yugao, who shifted nervously. Tsunade smiled. You must be Yugao Azuki. I've heard quite a bit about you from Naruto on our last meeting. Yugao just nodded. It's an honor to meet you, Tsunade-sama. You're an inspiration for not just me but all the kunoichi in the world. Naruto could hear the nervous quiver in Yugao's voice as she spoke. Tsunade only smiled at her warmly. Not that I'm complaining or anything, but what are you doing here, Oba-san? Naruto interrupted. You could have informed me earlier. Tsunade returned her gaze at him and smiled widely. Well, she said cheerfully. When I heard you were participating in the Chunin exam, I couldn't let the opportunity pass of seeing you in action and earning some easy money. Naruto just barely stifled his groan as Jiraiya laughed. I'm feeling used, Naruto thought. Some things never change, Jiraiya interjected. But I'm feeling left out here. You haven't even given me a glance, brat. And here I thought I'd found my perfect apprentice. Naruto rolled his eyes. I'm not ignoring you, Jiraiya-sensei. I was just surprised at seeing Oba-san and Shizune again. The old man already informed me you'd be attending the Chunin exams. Damn, I told him to keep it a secret, Jiraiya grunted. Well, anyways, congratulations on the win, brat. I'll see you later. I have to discuss some stuff with sensei. He then gave Naruto a hearty pat on the back that nearly sent him sprawling, and left the room. Returning his attention to the others, Naruto suddenly realized his own sensei's absence. Hey, where is Shikaku-sensei? He had some business with the other clan heads. He told me he would visit you guys later, Hana informed him. Tsunade then turned her attention towards the two female genin and spoke. So Yugao and Hana, tell me about yourself. Hokage office. So how long will you be staying in the village this time, Jiraiya? The Hokage asked, standing near the window and looking out on the bustling streets of Konohagakure. Jiraiya was leaning his back against the wall and shrugged his shoulders. Not long. I wish I could stay, but you know my work. I can't afford to be in one place for too long. Hiruzen nodded slowly. Was he putting too much work on Jiraiya's shoulders? He felt ashamed of himself for all the times he'd called on Jiraiya to do the near impossible. Had he failed as a teacher, father, and village leader? Thinking back, he wondered if he could have done things differently. Maybe then the student he'd considered a genius wouldn't have betrayed the village and the fourth Hokage wouldn't have needed to sacrifice himself at such a young age. Don't think too much of the past, sensei, Jiraiya said quietly. Hiruzen considered his student. I didn't know you could read me so well, Jiraiya. Jiraiya frowned. I don't need to be an expert to know what you're thinking. Your silence says it all. But Jiraiya's insight was understandable. He knew the feeling of regrets too. He knew what it felt like to want so badly to change things that can't be changed. Hiruzen didn't say anything in response and just shook his head, shaking the thoughts out of his mind. There was no point in dwelling in the past. Perhaps I can give this hat to you and finally retire in peace. As you know, I'm not getting any younger as time passes. Not interested. Try someone else, old man, Jiraiya grunted in response. Well, I tried, Hiruzen muttered with a deadpan look before he spoke. By the way, where is Tsunade and why didn't you inform me earlier that she'd be coming back? Don't get your hopes up, sensei, she's not going to stay. She just wanted to meet Naruto and surprise him. She asked me to stay quiet about it. Well, at least she could have given me a visit first, Hiruzen said with a heavy sigh. But he wasn't surprised in the slightest. They weren't exactly on good terms at the moment. So what do you want to discuss with me? He then asked, changing the subject. It had to be important for you to personally make this visit to me. Remember when I told you of a group that calls themselves the Akatsuki? The same group our old friend has joined. Jiraiya asked, his face getting serious. Orochimaru, you got something on him. Anything regarding his psychotic student could not be ignored. Jiraiya let out another sigh. Apparently he deserted the group a while back for some unknown reason. But what I do know is that he had done something to piss off the leader. I'm still trying to discover what that was. Anything else on him? Not yet. The bastard went into hiding and I need some time to locate him again. Jiraiya knew they would need to deal with his ex-teammate as soon as possible before he became a major problem for the village. Hiruzen nodded at him grimly. It's all because of his weakness that Orochimaru left the village. It was only his weakness that had kept him from ending Orochimaru sooner. Keep your sources on lookout, Jiraiya. We can't afford to let him do as he pleases and cause any more problems. Jiraiya frowned but nodded nonetheless. I wish things had never come to this. I still remember trying to talk sense with him on the day he went rogue. Funny how time changes. What about the Akatsuki? Did you get any more information on them? Hiruzen asked. He knew the group posed a threat to the great nations, but his biggest concern was that no one yet knew their motivations or goals. But he couldn't afford to contact Itachi for any information in fear of his cover being blown. The only information they had was that the group consisted of high S-rank missing ninja from multiple hidden villages, and that they were working as a mercenary group. Their main objective is still unknown. But recently they've been taking some missions from smaller villages, and even that old goat Onoki is using them to get his high-rank missions done for Iwagakure, Jiraiya stated. This is troubling, Jiraiya. They can pose serious trouble in the coming future. Jiraiya nodded. Don't worry. I'll try to get as much information as possible on them. But at the moment my main focus will be on locating Orochimaru again. Hiruzen looked at Jiraiya for a moment. For the time you'll remain in the village, you'll be spending your time training Naruto, I take it. Well, of course, Jiraiya stated with a wide grin. Hiruzen shook his head with a small smile on his face. That kid is really something else. But sometimes I really worry about him. Throwing himself in training and doing missions while closing his heart to others would never do him good. He wished Naruto would talk a little more about his feelings with others. Well, at least there's a lot of improvement in his behavior since the last time I met him, Jiraiya said. Hiruzen nodded. That was right after the events with Itachi and Shisui where he completely distanced himself from others. He still doesn't trust everyone, but at least he is open with his teammates. I've seen some changes in him since he met you and Tsunade as well. Hiruzen said with a small smile. What worries me the most is that Danzo is showing a lot more interest in him day by day. He sighed. Danzo may show interest in him, but Naruto is a mature kid, sensei. He knows what's good and bad for him, and Danzo knows that. Hiruzen let out a long sigh. That may be true, but we can't underestimate Danzo. I'll have to figure something out to deal with him. Well, don't worry about it too much, sensei. I'll warn Naruto, Jiraiya said and walked up to the window. One more thing I wanted to ask though. Is there something going on between Naruto and that purple-haired girl in his squad? He asked with a mischievous look on his face. Hiruzen laughed in amusement. Well, not that I'm aware of. Jiraiya looked disappointed. Well, anyways, I'll see you later, sensei. With that, he jumped down from the window without waiting for any response from the Hokage. Hiruzen stared at Jiraiya's departing figure and muttered, I hope I don't get any complaints from the bathhouse. Time skip. 1 year. Naruto coolly observed the bustling life within the village around him as he walked on the busy streets of Konoha. Yugao walked alongside him laughing and chatting. He is now 11 years old, a few months away from 12. It's been almost over a year since he became a Chunin with his 2 teammates. He has been doing missions with his teammates as well as partnering with other ninjas after his promotion, which earned him the respect of his fellow ninjas, because of his performance on each mission. Everything has been going great so far. He is learning new skills in his free time while enjoying his life as a ninja. Jiraiya left a month after the Chunin exams, but in that time he taught him some useful skills. After some time, his Obaa-san also left the village, saying that she couldn't stay and mentioning something about people coming after her for overdue debts. Concerned about Naruto never taking days off, his sensei ordered him to take a long break for a week. The Hokage had backed the order and told him to take a rest from the constant training. Given that Naruto had no idea what to do with his time other than missions and training, he couldn't stop feeling like he had suddenly been set adrift in a calm sea. He tried to sleep all day, but his body, used to missions, woke him up before the crows started cawing in the morning. Having no other choice, he was forced to kill time playing with the 5-year-old grandson of the Hokage, Konohamaru. Naruto loved spending time with him and had really gotten close to the kid, to the point where Konohamaru followed Naruto everywhere, calling him his big brother. He was beyond delighted to have Naruto there spending time with him, given that Naruto was normally always away on missions. His time with Konohamaru also brought up his own memories of his time with Itachi and Shisui. But one thing Naruto knew was that he was not going to leave Konohamaru the way they had left him. He was spending his vacation off watching over Konohamaru when Yugao came and dragged him out for a walk. Hey, are you even listening to me? An annoyed Yugao broke him out of his thoughts. Naruto blinked before turning toward her and meeting her eyes. You should watch where you're going, you know, Naruto remarked. Her voice had a little bounce in it. You wanna take a break over there? She pointed towards his favorite ramen restaurant, Ichiraku Ramen, ahead of them. Naruto, being Naruto, could not resist the temptation of ramen. He considered it the food of the gods after all, and they both headed over to the stand. 2 miso ramen please. Yugao called out and sat down on a stool in front of the shop. Naruto sat beside her quietly. Coming. Naruto heard a familiar voice from inside the shop. Oh, if it ain't little Naruto-kun. Ayame. Naruto smiled and waved at the girl in front. Good to see you again. I thought you forgot about us, Naruto-kun. You hardly come here for ramen anymore. Naruto smiled apologetically. Sorry, I've been busy with missions and all lately. Yugao smiled as she watched Naruto interacting with the shop girl. So, is this your girlfriend? Ayame asked with eyes glittering as her father set 2 bowls of ramen in front of the couple. Friend, Naruto grunted in response. Oh, I bet she's all disappointed now. Ayame teased and Yugao looked about ready to protest in surprise when Ayame laughed and turned her eyes back to Naruto. So how's the life of a Chunin treating you? Well, can't complain since the missions are more challenging. Yugao sat quietly fuming, her face turned to her food as she slowly ate her ramen. Ayame nodded. Well, enjoy your ramen you too. Can't be lazing around, I have some work to finish. Watching the girl leave, Yugao shifted her gaze to Naruto. So are you going to tell me what's on your mind, Naruto-kun? You were mostly quiet on our walk over here. Naruto played with the ramen in the bowl, hesitating if he should tell her or not, but knowing she wouldn't leave him alone if he didn't tell her. He was also worried about her reaction if he told her. Naruto sighed. Gigi told me that they are considering me for Anbu and I was just thinking about that. You really are amazing. Huh, Naruto-kun. Yugao murmured, with her face looking down blankly after hearing the news. I wish I was like you. A true prodigy as they call you. She said it with a mocking smile while she raised her hands in exaggeration. You should be dancing in joy. Naruto knew it was her childhood dream to become an Anbu officer and sighed at her response. Why the hell do you sound so disappointed about it? Why wouldn't I be disappointed that I don't have talent like you? That I'll always be behind you. You never mentioned before that you wanted to join Anbu. It's been my dream forever and you just up and take it from me. She snapped at him. Naruto narrowed his eyes and glared at her. Talent, talent, talent. I hate that word. I work hard like everyone else. I wasn't born strong, and if you're so upset about me joining the Anbu, you should train to become strong instead of crying over it. Being a ninja doesn't mean competing with others. You'll have to deal with so many awful, terrible things all the time. You'll never achieve your dream with that kind of mindset. Why you? I don't want you telling me how a ninja should be. Yugao replied, almost like a declaration. Naruto caught a glimpse of rage in her eyes. He knew then that had crossed the limit. She stood up. Enjoy your meal, Uzumaki-san. Naruto saw that a single tear slipped out of the corner of her eye. Please sit down, Yugao. But she ignored him, turned around, and didn't look back again. Naruto sighed. Damn it. What's this? Made your girlfriend cry, Naruto-kun? Ayame teased, having come around the counter at some point. If you can hide your aura that well, maybe you should become a ninja, Ayame. No thanks, I'm good as I am. She chuckled in response. Hokage Tower. I hope you know why I called you here, Danzo. The Hokage said, sitting in his chair and puffing on his pipe. Danzo stood with the full attention of his old teammate, watching him. The last meetings between the two had ended up with the discussion of Naruto's performance on his various missions, and he suspected the boy was the subject of this meeting too. But surely Hiruzen hadn't called him just to talk about Naruto. Exhaling smoke, Hiruzen turned his eyes on Danzo, who stared at him with a blank face. Just as you said before, it's been over a year since Naruto was promoted to Chunin. Since then, he has carried out his missions almost too perfectly, and having such an impeccable ninja portfolio, it's hard to believe he's only 11. Danzo blinked. He could not imagine that Hiruzen would willingly talk about Naruto with him. I see, so finally you're seeing things from my point of view. We may have our differences, Danzo, but in this case, I guess we see eye to eye. Hiruzen had always thought he could work things out with Danzo. He could never deny the loyalty Danzo had shown towards the village throughout the years. Get to the point, Hiruzen. What about Uzumaki, and why did you summon me? Hiruzen snorted a little at Danzo's attitude. Our Anbu commander has made an interesting proposal. He wants Naruto to join the Anbu. As he spoke, he tried to read Danzo's expressions, but for his ire and disappointment, he did not get anything other than a blank stare. He had known Danzo too long to be fooled, though, and was sure that he was excited beneath that emotionless gaze. I see. Danzo said. According to him, Naruto won't be able to use his abilities to his fullest capabilities in the regular Konoha forces and Jonin units. He thinks Naruto possesses unparalleled talents as a ninja, and he mentions that it's our duty to guide him to a place where he can fully use that talent. So he came to me about the possibility of the boy joining the Anbu. Hiruzen never broke his eye contact, even for a second. He kept staring in the blank darkness of Danzo's eyes to get anything out of him. Homura and Kaharu are totally opposed. They say it's dangerous to have a Jinchuriki in the Anbu. Hiruzen took a second puff of his pipe. Maybe you could stop smoking while we are discussing important business, at least, Hiruzen. Danzo frowned as Hiruzen packed tobacco into his pipe for the third time. Hiruzen shrugged his shoulders slightly in dissatisfaction, before setting the pipe down on the desk. They even went as far as to bring up your name, stating that you'd never support the idea of Naruto joining the Anbu. Hiruzen knew that Danzo had never thought much of Kaharu and Homura and was sure this would get a response out of the man. He had mentioned before his opinion that they had managed to live through many of their tribulations through luck alone. But he only remained silent. I see, so you're also in Oppo. Hiruzen began. Can't you just let him in, then? Danzo interrupted. Hiruzen's eyes widened in suspicion. Naturally, he also thought Danzo would be opposed, but Danzo was not opposed in the slightest, quite the contrary in fact. The Anbu commander's proposal was a godsend for Danzo. Right from the start, he had planned for Naruto to join the Anbu since his root program had been, officially, banned, and it would be suspicious if Naruto was to suddenly disappear for a period of time for his training. Naruto Uzumaki was an essential figure for the future of the village. So much that Danzo hoped he could become Hokage in the future. Just like his father Minato Namikaze, Naruto wouldn't hesitate to take the hard decisions. He was a perfect candidate for the future Hokage. I know you have quite an impression of him, but I thought you would have disapproved of putting him in the Anbu. Hiruzen didn't even try to hide a dangerous look in his eyes, his suspicion obvious. Danzo remained calm under the Hokage's gaze. Naruto is the sort of ninja you see maybe once every 100 years. We cannot afford to not take advantage of everything he has to offer to the village. That answer is very you. The third Hokage nodded deeply as if trying to convince himself of something. I'm not 100% sure of letting him join the Anbu this early, but since Naruto has showed his interest, I've decided to assign him to Team Aro under Hitaki, Kakashi. Kakashi will take care of him and teach him the inner workings of the Anbu. Danzo was just grateful that the Hokage had approved of Naruto's early entry into the Anbu, whatever his reasons may be. Of course, Naruto is still so young. I'm not sure he should join just yet. Before the official assignment, therefore, we need to see if he's really ready for the Anbu. A mission to join the Anbu, huh? Danzo stated, giving Hiruzen a knowing look. Precisely. Would you leave that to me? Danzo asked. He had the perfect mission for Naruto. Somewhere in the village. So I assume you also agreed to join the Anbu. Affirmative. Naruto responded expressionlessly to Danzo's question. They were in the headquarters of the covert organization Danzo ran separate from the Hokage's Anbu. The Foundation. The organization Danzo ruled over was at least in name, affiliated with the Anbu, but it had a different command structure. The Foundation was an elite unit that recruited the finest within the village when they were still children and trained them to work in the shadows. Even though the Hokage had officially disbanded the organization after the Uchiha clan massacre, Danzo had reinstated it. It now worked to maintain the peace within the darkness of the village. Naruto himself had only learned all this after Danzo summoned him here. The majority of people in the village weren't even aware of the existence of the Foundation. For the citizens of Konoha, Danzo was just an administrative official who managed the surface of the Anbu. Danzo's eyes narrowed to thin lines on his face, and they focused on Naruto. His gaze seemed to catch every breath, every tremor of every hair. It was so sharp that it reminded Naruto why he was so afraid of the man in front of him. Naruto almost felt like he was on the battlefield with an enemy, but he was not going to back down and give Danzo the satisfaction of seeing him afraid. There's resistance from above at having a Jinchuriki in the Anbu. Their opinion don't matter to me. Naruto wanted to say, but he stayed silent. The Anbu were an elite squad that only accepted select ninja from the village. If he distinguished himself there, he would be a lot closer to his dream of becoming the Hokage. He also needed to get close to Danzo as much as he could, to know what exactly had happened on the night of the Uchiha massacre. He could not trust Itachi blindly. No matter what Itachi had said, Naruto knew that he couldn't wipe out an elite clan single-handedly in one night. There had to be something Itachi was hiding from him, and who better than the man who had assigned the mission to Itachi to gather the information from. That is what the Hokage had ordered him to investigate. Hidden secrets of Danzo and his foundation. Also, according to some rumors, the Uchiha clan had something to do with the Kyuubi attack, and he wanted to know exactly what had happened that night. He had the feeling that the Kyuubi attack and the Uchiha massacre were connected somehow. An achievement is required to show us whether or not you are suitable for the Anbu, stated Danzo. Do you mean a mission? Precisely. Danzo didn't move a muscle. Naruto had also not budged. He felt like if he so much as twitched in front of him, Danzo would see right through his facade. A silent battle was unfolding between the two men. I have been put in charge of giving you that mission. Danzo's taking the helm must indicate that it would be a dark and grim mission. Naruto had long been prepared for such a mission eventually and simply stared at Danzo. Danzo came straight to the matter. There is a man in the Anbu, age 34. Naruto waited for the man to continue. After a period of silence, Danzo started speaking again. Many have seen great talent in him from the time he was a child. This man came up the ranks through Genin and Shunin without incident and joined the Anbu at the same time he was promoted to Jonin, but he cut himself off for a second. Recently, we learned that he has been leaking some sensitive information to Kumogakure. A traitor. Naruto thought to himself. So the one to take care of him is me? He asked. I'm not finished, Danzo stated coldly. Those who belong to the Anbu do their utmost to keep the people of the village from learning of their close relationships. On the surface, this man lives an average life as a jonin. He has a wife and 2 children, ages 3 and 1. What is Danzo trying to plant inside me? Naruto asked himself. Was he trying to test the boy somehow by telling him that he had to kill someone with a family? But if by this speech Danzo thought that Naruto would be carried away by emotion and hesitate to fulfill his mission, Danzo was seriously mistaken. Other than the fact that he was linked to Kumogakure, this man is a capable ninja, trusted by the Hokage himself. Danzo spat the words in disgust. But if we permit a traitor, the village will never be strong. I understand, Naruto said, with a hint of irritation at Danzo's manner of speaking. And then, as soon as the words were out, he regretted it. For someone as insightful as you, this tale must sound like quite a roundabout. Not at all, Naruto said. But it is all for the singular purpose of having you know this man. Naruto swallowed the question of why he had to know the man. Kill this man, Danzo instructed with a tone of finality in his voice. Understood, Naruto replied, immediately. Family or not, gifted ninja or not, a traitor was a traitor. This was his mission. Danzo stood up. It is likely obvious at this point, but I am convinced that the place you belong is the Anbu. You are permitted one comrade on this mission. I have already chosen a capable partner for you. He will guide you if needed. Naruto had no problem with that, as long as his partner didn't slow him down. Danzo went around the desk in front of him and approached Naruto. Peace is actually a troublesome beast. He looked down and locked his eyes on Naruto's. It is hard to produce and maintaining it is next to impossible. Naruto felt like Danzo was a tiny bit pleased with himself. People eat food. While one person is finishing that day's supper, another is suffering somewhere with nothing to eat. When one person gets something, someone somewhere else loses something. Bit by bit, this inequality consumes the days of rest. The face of many villagers when he was younger popped up in the back of Naruto's mind. He felt the people's hateful glare. He remembered going to bed with an empty stomach. He clenched his teeth behind closed lips, unwilling to have the slightest change in his heart be noticed. There are always people suffering in the shadows of this so-called peace. People burdened with darkness. Don't you think we should actually hold in contempt those who forget this fact, who simply gorge themselves on peace? Naruto didn't understand what Danzo meant by all of this. What did he want to accomplish with this? Naruto silently continued to listen. Previously, I said you were the bearer of bad luck. Naruto remembered his first conversation with the man. Those words still bothered him. It plagued his mind even now. Your life will be ever shadowed by the chaos. That's why you need to become strong enough to cut out the roots of that chaos that bind themselves on you. Danzo said. And you're saying that the place where I can obtain that strength is the Anbu? Danzo nodded. They say a wise man only needs words, but you only need one word. No. You only need the first letter, but that cleverness will make you suffer. I'll suffer. Stop trying to hide your true self in front of me, Danzo interrupted. The desire for acceptance and love of a family is making you suffer. How can you? This raven bird mask of yours says a lot about who you are, Naruto Uzumaki. Danzo pointed at the newly obtained mask hanging by Naruto's waist. These birds as dark as the night itself have been known as the harbingers of death and grief, and even the collective noun for the raven is unkindness. But it is also true that they are smart birds, they can imitate the human voice, and are extremely adaptable. You are comparing me to a bird? Naruto questioned. You are one of those people who keeps their dark side hidden. You are good at observing people from a distance and understanding their thoughts. You can clearly see the darkness that hides in other people's hearts. Just like the raven, you adapt, shift and change according to the situation. You are persistent towards achieving your goals. Danzo spoke with so much conviction that Naruto almost thought everything he was saying was true. The one who can bring about true peace is the one who has the deepest darkness inside him. I believe you can become that person. At the end of that meeting, Naruto understood one thing, and that was that Danzo was very a dangerous man who would do anything to achieve his goal. Naruto walked up to the path that led to the Hokage monument. It was already the dead of night, but he needed some time to relax in peace and collect his thoughts after his meeting with the leader of the foundation, and nothing was better than his father's stone head to keep him comforted for the night. The first thing Naruto noticed upon reaching his destination was a purple-haired figure sitting alone, gazing over the nighttime view of the village. What is she doing up here? Naruto stood silently wondering if he should join her, remembering their meeting earlier. But she must have noticed his presence by now. He hesitated for a moment before he walked up to her and quietly settled down beside her. No one said a word and Naruto kept looking at her from the corner of his eye. She had tied her hair in a high ponytail. She did not even acknowledge his presence. After a long moment of silence, Naruto said, "Nice night. Huh, Purple-chan. So, anything interesting so far?" Idiot. He wanted to hit himself by now. Your annoying presence. Naruto laughed nervously. You're so funny, Yugao. Yugao looked at him blankly. Well, not so funny right now apparently. He thought to himself. Listen, Yugao, I'm sorry. I shouldn't have said those things. It was out of place. Yugao did not reply. Really, she didn't even know if she was upset with him or herself. She had been disappointed when she learned he was going to join the Anbu after she'd been working so hard to try to achieve it herself. But after the initial shock, it didn't bother her much anymore because she knew if not today, then tomorrow, or even a year from now, she would achieve her dream of being an Anbu. What bothered her was that uneasy feeling she had whenever she was with him. It was like he was trying to distance himself from her and the others. She feared that Naruto would become that same cold person he'd been during the academy. She hated that Naruto. Lost in her thoughts, she was caught completely off guard when Naruto reached his hand up to the ribbon holding her hair. Before she could react, he had grabbed it off, letting her hair flow down. She looked at him in surprise. I like your hair this way. Naruto smiled lightly. I am not here to please you, and don't touch me. She snatched the ribbon from his hand and tied her hair up again. Why are you even here, Yugao? Naruto asked, noticing her red eyes for the first time. Had she been crying? Why does it matter to you? Yugao muttered and felt her tears coming back at full force. She didn't want him to see her in this state. She looked down at the large stone head of the fourth and poured her heart out with her words. I wish you were here to beat some sense in your stupid son. He's always mean to me and doesn't listen to a thing I say and always troubles me. I hate him. He is nothing but a jerk. She sniffed as tears continued to flow. Naruto sat there silently watching her and felt like scum. He had never wanted to make her cry. Not knowing what else to do, and not wanting her to cry, he quickly brought her close to him in a hug. She tensed initially in surprise, but then wrapped her arms around his neck and buried her face in his chest. I'm scared, Naruto. Unable to do anything else, Naruto simply waited for her to calm. I feel like you're getting further and further away from everyone, from me. We're still young, Naruto, but you're moving so fast that no one will be able to reach you, and you'll be alone all by yourself with no one beside you again. Is this what Danzo had meant when he'd said to kill his emotions? Did they really cause weakness? But how could bonds with other people be broken? He liked the feeling of having someone to lean on, someone who cared about him. Just like this current feeling. He didn't want to lose this feeling. He tightened his arms around her and whispered in her ear soothingly. I'm not going anywhere without you, Yugao. I'll always be here with you. Danzo was wrong. Emotions didn't make him weak. They made him strong, and more importantly, they make him human. Minutes passed and Naruto and Yugao lost track of the time they were in each other's arms. After a while, they laid down on the head still holding each other. Yugao rested her head on his chest listening to his steady heartbeat. Naruto gazed up at the black, star-riddled sky and spoke softly. Do you know why I like watching the sky especially at night? You never told me. Yugao looked up at the sky as well, mesmerized at the dazzling stars. There was a brief silence before Naruto started talking. I always used to cry, thinking about my family before going to sleep. I always felt sad seeing other parents spending their time with their kids. I was desperate to find any clue which could connect me to my family. I met Gigi in the forest outside the village for the first time. I was eating some fish when he came and asked me if I could share some with him. I remember the time he told me that, compared to the vastness of the world, man's existence is very insignificant. That was the first conversation I had with him. Naruto chuckled. And over the time we become close, and I grew to enjoy spending time with him because talking with him was always meaningful. Every day you got to learn something new, and looking at his power and influence in the village, I asked him if he could help me find any clue on my family. Yugao, who was listening quietly, asked, and what did he say? He said he couldn't. Naruto smiled softly, remembering that day. But he said when someone dies, they become a shimmering star and watch over their loved ones from above. That's very beautiful. It may seem childish, but that was the only source from which I can connect with them, and I asked him how would I recognize them, and he told me I would just know when I see them. After that, I used to wait for the night to arise so I could look up at the sky. Naruto glanced at her and said, "Do you want to see them?" Yugao smiled softly. "Is that even a question?" Naruto laughed and pointed his finger at the sky. "You see that?" He pointed towards the two stars near each other, sparkling greater than the rest. "That's my mother and father. Whenever I see those stars, they always seem to be together at each other's side. Whenever I see them, I don't feel lonely and I just know that they are out there watching over me." Yugao looked into Naruto's eyes, full of happiness. She smiled softly and leaned towards his face and kissed him on his cheek, dangerously close to his lips. Her lips lingered there for a bit before she murmured softly, "Thank you, Naruto-kun." And then she rested her head back on his chest while she closed her eyes and wrapped her arms around his waist. Naruto was blushing crimson red from the feeling of her lips on his cheek as he spoke after a moment of silence. "Hey, Yugao." A small smile formed on Naruto's face. "Nothing." He closed his eyes as well while wrapping his arms around Yugao's frame. What a day it was.